The church bells were still ringing when Uncle Mark stepped in front of the heavy oak doors, his broad frame blocking my path like a bouncer at a club that didn't want my kind. "Turn around, Jordan," he said, loud enough for the arriving mourners to hear. "This is a house of God." I stood there in my black suit, the one I'd bought specifically for this moment, knowing Grandpa would want me to look respectable, and tried to process what was happening. Behind Mark, I could see the flower arrangements I'd ordered, the programs I'd helped design, the slideshow I'd created playing on repeat in the vestibule. "I'm here for Grandpa's funeral," I said, though it came out more like a question. "Sinners aren't welcome," Mark announced, his voice carrying across the church parking lot. "Grandpa's in heaven now. He doesn't need your perversion contaminating his memory." My Aunt Linda appeared beside him, clutching her pearls like they were a rosary. "Jordan, please, don't make a scene. Think of the family." "I am family." "Not anymore," my cousin Beth chimed in, emerging from the church in her choir robe. "Not since you chose that lifestyle." Grandpa was very clear about his beliefs. I looked past them into the church where my grandfather's casket sat surrounded by lilies, his favorite flowers, which I knew because I'd spent every Sunday afternoon with him for the past 5 years while the rest of them visited on Christmas and Easter. "I planned this funeral," I said quietly. "I picked the casket, the flowers, the music. And we thank you for that," Aunt Linda said with fake sweetness. "But it's time for family only now. I've been with him every week since you decided to throw your sin in our faces," Mark interrupted, "bringing that man to family dinners, holding hands at Grandpa's birthday. You think we didn't see how it hurt him? That man, Ethan, my partner of 3 years, who'd helped me move Grandpa into assisted living, who'd driven him to doctor's appointments when everyone else was too busy, who'd held my hand while Grandpa took his last breath because none of them could be bothered to show up until the will was mentioned. Grandpa never said. Grandpa was too polite to say anything," Beth snapped, "but we all knew. The way he'd change the subject when you mentioned that man. The way he'd look at those Christmas cards you sent with both your names." She shuddered theatrically. "It was cruel, Jordan, cruel to put him through that." A crowd was gathering now, church members, distant relatives, Grandpa's friends from the VFW, all watching as my family formed a human wall between me and my grandfather's funeral. "Please," I tried one more time, "just let me say goodbye." "You can say goodbye from out here." Uncle David joined the blockade, fresh from his 3rd divorce but somehow still moral enough to judge me. "We won't have you making this about yourself. This day is about Grandpa, not your agenda." My phone buzzed. Ethan, texting from the parking lot where he was waiting in the car, knowing he wouldn't be welcome but wanting to support me anyway. "I can see them. Want me to come?" "No," I typed back, "don't give them the satisfaction." "Jordan, are you texting?" Aunt Linda gasped. "At your grandfather's funeral? Have you no respect?" I laughed, actually laughed, standing there being barred from the funeral I'd planned, accused of disrespect by people who'd visited Grandpa exactly twice in his final year. "You know what? You're right. Family only." I turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, who gave the nursing home power of attorney when Grandpa had his stroke? Who spent nights sleeping in hospital chairs? Who learned to change colostomy bags and check blood sugar levels?" Silence. "That's what I thought. Enjoy the service. I'm sure Grandpa would be proud to see his family unified in bigotry. Very Christian of you." I made it to the car before the tears came. Ethan pulled me close, not saying anything, just holding me while I sobbed for the grandfather I'd lost and the family who'd thrown me away. The lawyer called during the service. I almost didn't answer. Morrison Associates had been Grandpa's law firm for 40 years, but I assumed they were calling about some funeral detail I'd missed. "Jordan, this is Patricia Morrison. I'm sorry to call during the service, but your grandfather left specific instructions. Are you somewhere private?" I looked at Ethan, then put the phone on speaker. "Yes, what instructions?" He knew there might be difficulties with the funeral arrangements. "He asked me to call you specifically at 11 a.m. if you weren't inside the church." I checked the time, 11:02. The funeral would have just started. "How did he know I wouldn't be inside?" Patricia's voice was gentle. He said, and I quote, "My family are good people, but they're fools about some things. If they let their foolishness override their love, then I need Jordan to know the truth." "What truth?" "Your grandfather left a video will. I'm sending you a link now. He wanted you to watch it during the service if you were excluded. He was very specific about the timing." My phone pinged with a secure link. Ethan and I looked at each other. "Should we?" "He wanted you to watch it now," Patricia continued. "I'll need to schedule a formal reading with the family next week, But your grandfather wanted you to see this first, alone. Well, he said Jordan and Ethan should watch it together if those idiots lock them out. He said that? My voice cracked. Among other things, I'll be in touch about the formal reading. And Jordan, I'm sorry for your loss. Your grandfather spoke of you often. He was very proud. The call ended. I stared at the link. You don't have to watch it now, Ethan said softly. We could go home. No, he wanted me to see it during the service, while they're in there performing their piety. I clicked the link. Grandpa appeared on my phone screen, sitting in his favorite chair in the assisted living facility. He looked tired but alert, wearing the cardigan I'd bought him last Christmas, the one Mark had mocked as too fancy for an old man. Jordan, his recorded voice was warm, loving. If you're watching this, then I was right about how today would go. I'm sorry, kiddo. Sorry, I won't be there to knock some sense into them personally. I was already crying again. Ethan squeezed my hand. First things first, I love you. I've loved you since the day you were born, and nothing has ever changed that. Not when you came out, not when you brought Ethan to meet me, not when the rest of the family decided their interpretation of God's love was more important than actual love. He leaned forward, looking directly at the camera. You think I didn't know why you visited every Sunday? Why you learned to play cribbage, pretended to enjoy my terrible coffee, listened to the same war stories 100 times? You were making sure I wasn't alone. While the rest of them were too busy with their righteous lives, you showed up. Only you inherit, he said clearly, everything, the house, the investments, the cabin up north, the '67 Mustang Mark's been drooling over for 30 years. All of it goes to you, and before any of them start squawking about contesting it, I had 3 doctors verify my mental capacity, and Patricia here can testify I've been planning this for 2 years. He chuckled. I can see Mark's face now, purple as an eggplant. He spent 40 years telling me what the Bible says about homosexuality. You know what he never quoted? By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. You and Ethan have more love in your little fingers than that whole bunch has in their bodies. The video continued for 20 minutes. Grandpa detailed every hypocritical action, every missed visit, every excuse. He had receipts, literally, records of who visited when, who called, who actually helped versus who just showed up when they needed money. Beth likes to sing in the choir, thinks it makes her holy, but when I needed someone to drive me to chemotherapy, where was she? Too busy with church activities. You drove me, Jordan, every single time, held the bucket when I got sick, never complained. Linda clutches those pearls I gave her for her wedding, acts like she's so proper, but she's the one who tried to get me declared incompetent last year so she could control my money. Didn't know I knew about that, did she? Patricia's very good at her job. And David, 3 divorces because he can't keep it in his pants, but he wants to lecture you about the sanctity of marriage. At least you and Ethan have been faithful. Yes, I notice these things. Old doesn't mean stupid. Then his tone shifted, becoming softer. Now, about the house. I know you love that old place as much as I do. All those Sunday dinners, the garden you helped me plant, the workshop where we built that terrible birdhouse. He smiled. It's yours now. Fill it with love. Fill it with friends who become family. Have barbecues and birthday parties, and maybe, if the Supreme Court keeps moving in the right direction, a wedding in the backyard. The cabin is special. Take Ethan there for your anniversary. The sunsets are spectacular in October, and the fishing's good if you remember where I showed you. The money, and there's a good bit of it, use it well. Travel. Donate to those organizations that helped kids like you. Live your life fully. That's all I ever wanted for any of my grandchildren. But you're the only one who understood that life is about more than judgment and rules. He was winding down now, looking tired. I'm recording one more video after this. For them, they'll see it at the official reading. It's less kind, but this is just for you, to tell you that you were seen, you were loved, and you were absolutely perfect exactly as God made you. Oh, and Jordan, that young man of yours, Ethan, he's good people. The way he looks at you, the way he held your hand during my bad days, that's real love. The kind your grandmother and I had. Don't let anyone tell you different. I know they're in that church right now, probably giving speeches about what a good Christian I was. Let them. You and I know the truth, that I'd rather have one grandchild who loved honestly than a dozen who hide behind Bible verses they don't understand. Be happy, kiddo. Be proud. Be yourself. And know that somewhere up here, I'm bragging to your grandma about our grandson the teacher and his partner the nurse who save lives and minds every day. I love you. The screen went dark. Ethan and I sat in the church parking lot, watching people file in for the service while I processed what had just happened. My phone was already buzzing with texts from Patricia about scheduling, asset lists, transfer documents. He knew, I kept saying, he knew they'd do this and he planned for it. He loved you, Ethan corrected, really loved you, not the love the sinner, hate the sin bullshit, actual love. Through the church windows, I could see Uncle Mark at the podium, probably talking about Grandpa's strong moral values. The irony was suffocating. You want to go home? Ethan asked. Actually, I looked at the church, then at my phone with its life-changing video. Let's go to Grandpa's house, our house. I want to sit in his garden and tell him about this. We drove away as the church bells rang again, leaving my family to their hollow ceremony. They could have the funeral. I had everything else, the memories, the love, and apparently, the entire inheritance. The will reading the following week was everything Grandpa had predicted. I arrived with Patricia and a security guard she'd insisted on just in case. The family was already assembled in the law firm's conference room, still in their mourning clothes like they'd come straight from another performance. This is a mistake. Uncle Mark started before Patricia could even speak. Jordan was disowned. He didn't even attend the funeral. Because you physically barred him from entering, Patricia said mildly. I have sworn affidavits from 6 witnesses who watched you block the church doors. We were protecting Grandpa's memory. Then you'll appreciate his video message. Patricia pulled up the second recording. He insisted the entire family watch this together. Grandpa appeared on the conference room screen. This time, he wasn't smiling. Well, if you're watching this, then you did exactly what I expected. You let your bigotry override your love and barred my grandson from my funeral. Congratulations. You've proven every suspicion I've had about you for years. Mark's face was indeed turning purple. I spent the last 5 years watching you all carefully, Grandpa continued, watching who showed up, who called, who cared. Do you know how many times Linda visited me in assisted living? 4 times in 3 years, and twice was to ask for money. That's not, Linda started, but Patricia raised a hand for silence. David, you came once, to ask me to invest in another one of your failed business schemes. Beth, you sang at the facility's Christmas service, but couldn't stay for dinner. Too busy, you said. But Jordan came every Sunday, every single Sunday, brought Ethan too. Once they got serious, you know what we did? Talked, played cards, watched old movies. They learned about my medications, helped with my physical therapy, made sure I wasn't forgotten. When I had my stroke, Jordan slept in a chair for a week. Where were you, Mark? Oh right, on vacation. Couldn't cut it short for your dying father. When I needed help managing my affairs, Jordan spent weekends organizing paperwork, paying bills, making sure everything was handled. Linda was too busy trying to get power of attorney behind my back. So let me be clear, Jordan inherits everything because Jordan earned everything, not through blood or manipulation or showing up when convenient, but through love, consistent, unconditional love. As for the rest of you, I've left you each something. Grandpa's smile was sharp. Mark, you get my Bible, the one you've been quoting at me for years. Try reading the parts about love and compassion this time. Linda, you get the pearls. Wear them in good health and remember that jewelry doesn't make you a good person. David, you get my collection of marriage counseling books, maybe 4th time's the charm. Beth, you get my hymnal collection, since singing about God's love is easier than showing it. Everything else, the house, the cabin, the cars, the money, goes to Jordan. And Ethan, if you're there, take care of my boy. You're the son-in-law I always wanted, even if the law doesn't recognize it yet. The video Grandpa looked directly at the camera one last time. To those of you sputtering about fairness, you had 50 years to show me who you were. You chose judgment over love, rules over relationship, piety over presence. Jordan chose differently. He chose love, just like I choose him. Oh, and if any of you contest this will, the alternate beneficiary is PFLAG. I'm sure they'd make good use of the money. Your choice. The screen went dark. The conference room exploded. Threats of lawsuits, accusations of manipulation. Mark actually lunging across the table before the security guard stepped forward. Through it all, I sat quietly, holding Ethan's hand under the table. This is undue influence, Linda shrieked. Jordan turned him against us. Jordan visited him, Patricia said calmly. There's no law against kindness. He's giving our inheritance to, David couldn't even finish. To his grandson and his grandson's partner, I said, finally speaking, the 2 people who actually acted like family. You're not family, Mark roared. You gave that up when you chose perversion. No, I said, standing. You gave up family when you chose hate, when you literally blocked me from Grandpa's funeral, when you decided your interpretation of Christianity was more important than Christ's actual teachings. Grandpa saw you, I continued, all of you. He saw how you treated me, how you treated Ethan, how you treated anyone who didn't fit your narrow worldview, and he made his choice. I turned to Patricia. When can we start the transfer paperwork? Immediately, though I should warn you, the estate is larger than you might expect. Your grandfather was very successful in his investments. How much larger? Ethan asked. Patricia smiled. Let's just say he turned his military pension into 8 figures through careful investing. He lived modestly by choice, not necessity. The family's rage turned to stunned silence. They'd thrown away millions in the name of bigotry. We'll contest, Mark said weakly. No judge will uphold this. Try it, Patricia said. I have 2 years of documentation, medical evaluations, and a very clear paper trail. Plus, your behavior at the funeral won't play well in court. 1 year later, Ethan and I stood in Grandpa's backyard, our backyard, exchanging rings in front of the garden we'd expanded in his memory. Patricia officiated. She'd gotten ordained online just for the occasion, and our chosen family filled the space with love and laughter. We'd invited my biological family, knowing they wouldn't come. Only one did, my cousin Emma, Mark's daughter, who'd been away at college during the funeral fiasco. Grandpa would have loved this, she said, hugging me after the ceremony. He always said you were the only one who got it right. Got what right? Love. He said you understood that love wasn't about rules or judgment, but about showing up. She looked around the yard full of celebrating people. Looks like you learned well. We'd turned Grandpa's house into exactly what he'd wanted, a place full of love and chosen family. Sunday dinners for friends who'd been rejected by their own families. Holiday celebrations for those with nowhere else to go. The cabin became a retreat for LGBTQ+ kids who needed a safe space to figure things out. And in Grandpa's old workshop, now converted to an office, I kept his video saved on my computer. On bad days, when the hate in the world felt overwhelming, I'd watch him say, "You were absolutely perfect exactly as God made you." He was right about something else too. The sunsets at the cabin in October were spectacular. And yes, the fishing was good if you remembered where he showed you. Just like love, if you knew where to look for it.
Henceforth, my brother and his wife declared, "We'll manage the household independently, so find another place to live." My mother, aligning herself with their decision, treated me as an impediment. Do they comprehend who has been footing the bills for the house? I never anticipated such disrespect. In the recesses of my mind, I resolved to take certain actions. I go by the name Carrie, a 30-year-old woman. Currently, I reside in my parents' home after returning from college. Initially, I ventured into the corporate world to forge my path, but the challenges overwhelmed me, prompting my return home. While initially navigating unemployment, I explored work-from-home opportunities. Armed with a scientific background, I embarked on a freelance engineering career. Commencing with modest projects, the income was meager, yet the experience of working independently was profoundly meaningful. In stark contrast to conventional employment, I could generate ample income without excessive social interaction. As my confidence grew, so did my workload and earnings. Within a year, my income rivaled that of a regular corporate employee. However, the predicament lay in my parents' understanding, especially my mother's reluctance to embrace my work-from-home lifestyle. My father grasped my explanation, but my mother, rooted in traditional beliefs, harbored apprehensions about what she couldn't fathom. Despite my earnest attempts to elucidate, my mother persisted with questions like, "How long do you plan on staying home?" and insinuations about the legitimacy of my online work. Despite presenting evidence of client emails and salary statements, my mother remained unconvinced. She suspected it to be some shady business or involvement in a dubious religion, despite the consistent payments and the legitimacy of my job. Despite my detailed explanations, my mother remained steadfast in her skepticism. She continually expressed concerns about the possibility of relying on unemployment benefits, emphasizing their impermanence. Although I had contemplated living independently, my savings were not yet sufficient. Around that time, my father's health took a toll, with deteriorating legs and back necessitating nursing care. Facing an early retirement and sudden income loss, my father assured me that his pension would suffice. However, acknowledging my mother's spending habits, I questioned his ability to manage. His face wore the fatigue of anxiety about the uncertain future. My father had supported me through college and even when I returned home due to mental health challenges. The idea of leaving him alone and continuing to live independently troubled me. My mother, too, grappled with confusion over my father's sudden condition. Contemplating the situation, I felt a sense of responsibility and a desire to give back. Reassuring my father, I pledged to support the family from that point onward. He expressed surprise, doubting my income's adequacy, but I confidently showed him my stable financial situation. Grasping the reality, my father, who had always understood my circumstances, was taken aback by my newfound stability. Encouraged by his understanding, I offered to help with household expenses, medical bills, and other financial obligations. Each month, I transferred a certain amount to my father's bank account, shouldering a significant part of the financial burden. As my mother had been using my father's credit card, I created a new main card and provided her with a supplementary card. My father, mindful of saving money, urged my mother to follow suit. In response, my mother questioned whether I should be asked to leave the house. I pointed out my financial contributions and emphasized that it would be more challenging without my support. Skeptical, my mother remained unconvinced and suspicious of my assistance. It took my father's persuasion to finally gain her agreement, allowing me to continue living with them. Continuing my work and household responsibilities, I found my mother increasingly taking my assistance for granted. Her strictness intensified, with constant remarks about the speed of my chores. "Can't you finish your chores faster?" she would complain. I explained the challenge of multitasking while working, but she dismissed my concerns. The strain on my relationship with her became apparent, and it seemed irreparable. In contrast, my father, understanding my efforts, provided much-needed support. Despite this strained dynamic, we persevered in this manner for a year. After a year, my father's health took a sudden downturn, requiring hospitalization. Visiting him daily, I shared moments of concern and reassurance. Aware of the strain on me, my father expressed gratitude, acknowledging the difficulties in my relationship with my mother. As my father grappled with health issues, the already strained relationship between my mother and me deteriorated further. Despite feeling suffocated at times, I remained committed to supporting my family. Recollections of my mother's past efforts, especially during my student days, kept me steadfast in this commitment. However, a significant shift occurred when my mother welcomed my brother Kevin and his wife Mary. Their unexpected arrival brought an abrupt change to my living situation. My brother explained their decision, stating they would be living in the house from now on to ease the burden on me. I was taken aback, and my mother seemed to avoid eye contact. While my brother and his wife claimed their intention was to support me, a hidden meaning lingered in their words. My mother, expressing gratitude, subtly hinted at my need to contribute more to the household. Despite the surprise, I learned that my brother, a graduate of a prestigious college, had joined a reputable company. The unexpected turn of events left me questioning the true motives behind my brother and his wife's presence in our home. Certainly, he must have been earning a substantial salary, but I too was diligently pursuing my own endeavors. I wondered if they could manage without my contributions. Transitioning into a new life at home with my brother and his wife proved to be more demanding than anticipated. "Wake up, Perry, make breakfast," my brother's wife hollered, banging on my door. Fully awake and already engrossed in my work as a morning person, I explained that I was already up and working. Despite my work commitments, they insisted that I prepare breakfast. "Get on with it and get breakfast ready," she demanded. I reluctantly forced myself to assist, considering our family's usual morning freedom. Typically, we enjoyed meals at our own pace, especially when my mother and brother's wife were present. I presumed it was customary for the wife to prepare breakfast for her husband. However, my sister-in-law insisted on cooperation, and I reluctantly joined them in the kitchen. Despite my efforts, their dissatisfaction was evident. Is this what you prepared for breakfast? This isn't enough, they complained. I had meticulously crafted a breakfast plate featuring soft scrambled eggs, a refreshing lettuce salad, fresh buttered toast, and a succulent sausage, thinking it would be well received. However, it seemed I had missed something. You don't have to eat it, I retorted. But their surprise was palpable. Their reaction turned confrontational, questioning my attitude and who I thought I was. My brother, often condescending, mocked me, likely influenced by our mother. Despite explaining my work commitments, they dismissed it. What kind of work is that? Are you crazy? They exclaimed. Frustrated by their lack of understanding and the impact on my work, I packed my laptop, ignored their protests, and left the house. As I departed, my brother's voice echoed in the background, demanding to know where I was going. Ignoring the question, I proceeded to my father's hospital room. As I hurried into my father's hospital room, his surprised gaze met mine. "Carrie, what's wrong?" "You seem flustered," he observed. I recounted the recent incident, and my father, wearing a surprised expression, responded, "I didn't know they were. I'm sorry, Carrie. Don't worry about it. You can choose your own way of life." Feeling lost, I expressed concern that my mother might feel more comfortable if my brother Kevin were at home. However, my father reassured me, "You don't need to be in a place where you don't feel comfortable. All I want is for you to live happily. Live your life the way you want to live." Encouraged by my father's words, I decided to leave home. Upon returning that evening, I encountered a tense scene resembling a movie. The serious faces of my mother, brother, and sister-in-law greeted me. My brother accused me of not being at work, forcing him to take the day off. I inwardly questioned the responsibility of easily taking time off work. Their voices escalated, culminating in my brother demanding, "Get out of here. From now on, the three of us will live together. If you don't want to stay, please leave. We don't need an overbearing presence like you to support us." It was a shocking statement, and I replied in surprise, "Why?" Ignoring my protests, my brother and his wife insisted on my departure, declaring that I was no longer needed in the absence of our father. My mother, aligning with their sentiments, regarded me as a hindrance. The frustration intensified as they dismissed my involvement in the family's finances and prioritized their own concerns. Enraged by their insensitivity, I devised a plan. Initially, I transferred the money linked to the credit card my mother used daily to another account under my management. This subtle move aimed to surprise my mother when she could no longer access her credit card. I initiated a money transfer from my father's account, a crucial pillar supporting the family's financial stability. However, I ensured that only my father's medical expenses could be withdrawn from this separate account, unbeknownst to my mother. Consequently, a significant financial burden now rested on my brother and his wife. Though unaware of the intricate details of my brother's income, I was certain that he would feel the weight more than ever. After completing the necessary formalities, I gathered my belongings and declared my departure, saying, "I'm leaving this place." To my surprise, my mother, brother, and sister-in-law, who had been relentlessly harassing me, looked taken aback. Their astonishment revealed that they hadn't anticipated my decisive action, although, from the expressions on their faces, it seemed they were secretly enjoying the moment. As I announced my departure, they belittled me, expressing their relief. "You're finally leaving. We've never dealt with such a troublesome person. You're not coming back, are you?" In response, I asserted, "Of course not. Don't contact me." They smiled as I left the house, but I couldn't help but wonder what they would think after I had left. Embarking on a new life in a tranquil environment, I found solace and the freedom to enjoy my own time. Refreshed and focused, I immersed myself in my work. However, as expected, a call from my brother disrupted the peace. "I told you not to contact me. What's wrong?" I questioned. His voice conveyed surprise and urgency as he inquired about my involvement in the family's financial transactions. Confirming my role, I reminded him that I had mentioned my work several times, but neither he nor our mother had believed me. Expressing confusion, he admitted, Well, Mom said a lot of things, and I was a little confused. Acknowledging that it wasn't my fault, he revealed a financial predicament. With my absence, they struggled to manage expenses, and my mother's spending had exacerbated the situation. Though sympathetic, I asserted, I was able to support you in many ways because I was at home. I'm not there anymore, so you have to handle it, Carrie. I found myself in an unexpected situation when my brother contacted me, urgently requesting assistance in transferring money to his bank account. Perplexed, I asked if he was joking, given that he worked for a sizable company. However, to my surprise, my brother confessed that he had been fired from his job due to a significant mistake. His revelation left me speechless, and I realized that he might have returned to our parents' house assuming there was enough money available. Perhaps he relied on the notion of a stable pension following our father's retirement. Wanting to enlighten my brother about my financial contributions to the household, I found amusement in the thought of his astonishment upon learning the truth. His wife and my mother joined the plea for financial aid, claiming they were on the verge of running out of savings. My mother even revealed that my father refused to contribute to household finances any longer. In response, I firmly declared that I had supported them enough, urging them to work hard and support themselves. I severed communication, emphasizing my decision to distance myself from their financial struggles. My father, recognizing the strain in his relationship with my mother, consulted a lawyer and opted for a quieter life in a different place. While I continued to visit my father daily, a friend shared my brother's recent struggles. He had moved into a modest apartment, leading a frugal life. My mother, once a homemaker, faced challenges in her sudden job, while my brother found it difficult to adapt to the opinions of younger colleagues. Despite his wife's efforts, she succumbed to the pressure and departed, leaving my brother and mother to navigate their challenges together. Concerns lingered for my mother, who maintained her habit of overspending, accumulating debts. However, I recognized my limitations in offering assistance. Focused on my own endeavors, I worked diligently in a comfortable living space, gradually accruing more resources. Contemplating new ventures, I aimed to spend quality time with my cheerful father, appreciating every moment with him.
The day I discovered what true betrayal felt like, I was sitting at our mahogany dining table, surrounded by college acceptance letters. Harvard, Stanford, MIT. Their prestigious letterheads scattered before me like fallen leaves. My hands trembled as I held the latest one from Princeton, their words of congratulation blurring through my tears. Mom, Dad, I got in. I got into Princeton. My voice echoed through our sprawling Victorian home, a house that had witnessed 3 generations of the Montgomery family's success. My mother's heels clicked against the hardwood floors as she approached, her face bearing an expression I couldn't quite read. Behind her, my father's heavy footsteps followed, his usual confident stride somehow hesitant. "That's wonderful, Catherine," my mother said, but her tone carried none of the excitement I'd expected. She exchanged a glance with my father, who cleared his throat and loosened his silk tie. "Sit down, Kathy. We need to talk." I sank back into my chair, the acceptance letter still clutched in my hands. Something in their demeanor made my stomach twist into knots. "Your brother, William," my father began, "his tech startup is showing incredible promise. The prototype he's developed could revolutionize renewable energy storage." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "But he needs significant funding to take it to the next level." My mother stepped forward, her manicured fingers trailing along the table's edge. "We've decided to invest in his company. It's a remarkable opportunity, one that could secure the family's future for generations." "That's great," I said, though uncertainty crept into my voice. "But what about my college tuition? The fund you've been saving since I was born?" The silence that followed felt like a physical weight pressing against my chest. "Catherine," my father said firmly, using my full name. "Never a good sign. We've made the decision to use your college fund to support William's venture. It's what's best for the family. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? But that was my money. You promised. Don't be selfish, Catherine, my mother cut in sharply. William's project could be worth millions. You can take out student loans like other people do, or maybe consider a local community college for a few years. I stared at them, these people who had raised me, who had always preached about the importance of education, who had spent years encouraging my dreams of attending an Ivy League school. Now they stood before me, calmly destroying those dreams to favor my brother. Again. William had always been their golden child. 4 years older than me, he dropped out of college to pursue his entrepreneurial dreams. While I spent my high school years maintaining a perfect GPA, serving as class president, and winning national science competitions, William bounced from one failed startup to another, each time convincing our parents to invest just a little more. How much? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What? My father frowned. How much of my college fund did you give him? My mother shifted uncomfortably. All of it. The full $289,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. Nearly $300,000. Gone. Every birthday check from grandparents, every summer job earning, every penny saved for my future, handed over to William without a second thought. I stood up so abruptly my chair toppled backward. Did you even consider asking me? It's my money. Catherine Elizabeth Montgomery. My father's voice boomed through the dining room. That is enough. This decision is final. William's project needs this investment, and as part of this family, you need to support what's best for everyone. Best for everyone? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Or best for William? Your brother has vision, my mother said defensively. He sees opportunities others can't. Sometimes that means taking risks. Risks with my future. I shouted, surprising even myself with the volume. What about my vision? My opportunities? My father's face hardened. If you can't understand the importance of supporting your family's interests, perhaps you're not as mature as we thought. Go to your room until you can discuss this rationally. I stood there, 18 years old, being sent to my room like a child for daring to object to having my future stolen. In that moment, something inside me shifted. A fundamental change in how I saw my family, my place in it, and what I needed to do next. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs to my room, but instead of collapsing on my bed to cry, as they probably expected, I pulled out my largest backpack and began to pack. Essential clothes, my laptop, the emergency credit card I'd never used, and most importantly, my documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport. My hands moved methodically, my mind surprisingly clear despite the chaos of emotions swirling inside me. From my sock drawer, I retrieved the $200 I'd saved from my last tutoring sessions. Money I hadn't added to my college fund because I'd planned to use it for Princeton merchandise once I got in. Now it would serve a different purpose. As I packed, memories flooded through my mind. William's first failed startup, a social media platform for pets that burned through $50,000 our parents' money. His second attempt, a cryptocurrency that lasted 3 months before collapsing. Each failure met with encouragement, support, and more funding, while I was told to be practical about my dreams. The sound of the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Through my window, I saw William's Tesla pulling into the driveway. Of course he was here, probably coming to collect his latest handout. I could hear their voices drifting up from below. William's charismatic laugh, my mother's adoring tone, my father's proud rumble. The perfect family moment, complete with their perfect son and his perfect excuses for needing more money. Opening my laptop one last time, I wrote 2 emails. The first to Princeton. Dear Admissions Committee, with deep regret, I must decline your offer of admission. Due to unexpected financial circumstances, I will be unable to attend Princeton University this fall. Thank you for the opportunity. Sincerely, Catherine Montgomery. The second email went to my parents. Mom and Dad, you've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. Don't look for me. Don't try to contact me. I'll find my own way without the family money or the family name. Catherine. I hit send, then removed the battery from my phone. From downstairs, I could hear William launching into another enthusiastic pitch about his revolutionary technology. In his world of dreams and schemes, $289,000 was probably just another number, just another stepping stone to his imagined success. But for me, it was the last straw. Slinging my backpack over my shoulder, I took one final look at my room, at the debate team trophies, the science fair medals, the honor roll certificates, all evidence of a life spent trying to earn the approval of parents who would always choose William first. I climbed down the trellis outside my window, something I hadn't done since I was 14. My feet hit the ground softly, and without looking back, I walked away from the Montgomery family estate. In my pocket was $200. In my head was a lifetime of straight A's and academic achievements, and in my heart was a burning determination to prove that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. I didn't know then that 10 years later, I would be sitting across from them in a corporate boardroom, watching them pitch their failing company to potential investors, not realizing that their last hope for salvation was the daughter they had dismissed so easily. But that part of the story would come later. First, I had to build something from nothing. First, I had to become someone they would never expect their practical daughter to be. With each step away from my childhood home, my resolve strengthened. They wanted to bet everything on William. Fine. I would bet everything on myself. And I wouldn't need their $289,000 to do it. The first night of freedom tasted like cheap coffee and desperation. I sat in a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of Boston, my backpack tucked securely under my feet, watching my phone battery slowly die. Before it went dark completely, I saw 17 missed calls from my mother, 5 from my father, and 1 text from William. Don't be dramatic, Kathy. Come home. I ordered another coffee, spreading my remaining cash on a laminate table. $178.42. The bus ticket from Connecticut had taken a bigger bite than expected. More coffee, hun? The waitress, Maria, had kind eyes and wore a name tag with 5 gold stars. Thanks, I said, then hesitated. Are you hiring? She looked me over. Pristine college interview clothes, expensive laptop, the obvious signs of a privileged kid playing runaway. But something in my expression must have touched her because she didn't immediately dismiss me. Kitchen help, she said finally. 6 to 2, minimum wage plus tip split. Start tomorrow if you want. I nodded, relief flooding through me. I'll be here. There's a motel down the street, she added, scribbling on her order pad. Tell Jimmy that Maria sent you. He'll give you the weekly rate. That night, in a motel room that smelled of old cigarettes and cleaning supplies, I opened my laptop and began to plan. The Princeton acceptance letter was still in my bag, a reminder of the future I'd just lost. But as I stared at it, an idea began to form. I'd spent my high school years tutoring rich kids in advanced mathematics and sciences. Their parents paid premium rates for my services because I got results. Perfect SAT scores, improved GPAs, early college admissions. I'd always seen it as a way to earn extra money for college. Now, I saw it as the foundation for something bigger. Opening a new document, I began to type. Elite academic consulting, specialized tutoring, and college admissions guidance founded by a Princeton-accepted scholar. I worked through the night, building a simple website using my coding skills from AP Computer Science. By dawn, I had created professional-looking business cards at an all-night print shop, spending $50 of my precious savings. The next 6 months fell into a grueling routine. From 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., I worked at the diner, learning every aspect of the business I could. Maria, it turned out, had owned the place for 20 years. She taught me about inventory management, staff scheduling, and most importantly, how to read people. From 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., I built my tutoring business. My first client came from a regular at the diner who overheard me helping Maria's daughter with calculus during my break. Word spread quickly among the wealthy suburbs of Boston. There was a young tutor who had gotten into Princeton, but chose to defer, who could explain complex concepts clearly, who guaranteed results. I never mentioned my real last name. Catherine Montgomery became Kate Morgan, and my clients never questioned it. They cared about results, not pedigree. By month 3, I was making enough from tutoring to quit the diner, though I still helped Maria with her books on weekends. She'd become something between a friend and a mentor, teaching me lessons about business that no Ivy League school could match. "You're good with numbers," she said one Sunday, watching me optimize her inventory system. "But you're better with people. That's where real money is made." She was right. My tutoring clients weren't just paying for academic help. They were paying for confidence, for hope, for a chance at the future their children dreamed of. It was something I understood intimately. One day, as I was reviewing a student's college essay, his mother made an offhand comment that would change everything. "If only you could clone yourself. Every parent in Boston would hire you." That night, I couldn't sleep. Clone myself? No, but I could scale. I reached out to other high-achieving students who had gotten into top colleges but chose to take gap years. Many were brilliant, but needed money, just like me. I offered them a proposition: work under my brand, use my methods, and earn 70% of the fees, while I handled marketing and client acquisition. Within 2 months, Elite Academic Consulting had 10 tutors. Within 6 months, we had offices in Boston, New York, and Greenwich, Connecticut, though I carefully avoided any locations too close to my family's social circle. My first million came faster than I expected, earned through a combination of the tutoring business and strategic investments in tech stocks. I lived modestly, pouring every spare dollar into expansion. While William was probably still burning through my college fund on his latest venture, I was building something sustainable. But I knew tutoring was just the beginning. Through my wealthy clients, I began to hear whispers about investment opportunities, startups seeking funding, established companies looking for fresh perspectives. I listened, learned, and most importantly, I planned. The breakthrough came during a tutoring session with Emma Chen, daughter of tech mogul James Chen. As I helped her with advanced economics, I noticed the investment prospectus for his company, Chen Tech Solutions, lying open on his home office desk. "Dad's worried," Emma confided during our study break. "The new energy storage project is failing. but he's invested too much to back out now. Energy storage. Just like William's supposed revolutionary technology. I spent that night researching Chentech's project, and by morning, I knew two things. First, their approach was fundamentally flawed, and second, I knew how to fix it. It took 3 weeks to get a meeting with James Chen, using every connection I'd built through my tutoring network. When I finally sat across from him in his corner office, he looked amused. "Miss Morgan," he said, "my daughter speaks highly of you. But what makes you think you understand energy storage technology?" I opened my laptop and began my presentation. 4 hours later, he wasn't smiling anymore. Instead, he was offering me a partnership. 30% stake, he said, if you can deliver what you're promising. I countered with 40% and full control of the technical development. He agreed. 6 months later, Chentech's new energy storage system was revolutionizing the industry. The technology that William had dreamed of creating, I had actually built, though under a different name and with a different company. My net worth jumped to 9 figures overnight. But I wasn't done. Using Chentech's success as a springboard, I began acquiring struggling tech companies, particularly in the energy sector. Each acquisition was done through shell companies and holding firms, always keeping the name Catherine Morgan separate from the growing business empire. I hired the best lawyers and accountants to create a labyrinth of corporations that all led back to Morgan Enterprises, my private holding company. To the outside world, Morgan Enterprises was run by a reclusive CEO who never gave interviews or appeared in public. Years passed. My empire grew. I moved from Boston to New York to Silicon Valley, always staying ahead of any chance encounters with my family. Through discreet sources, I kept tabs on them. William's string of failures continued, each one funded by my parents' dwindling resources. The Montgomery family fortune, built over generations, was being bulled dry by their blind faith in their son. Then one morning in my San Francisco penthouse office, my assistant brought me interesting news. Montgomery Technologies is looking for investors, she said, placing the report on my desk. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. Your father is meeting with potential buyers next week. I picked up the report, a smile playing at my lips. After 10 years, everything had come full circle. Schedule a meeting, I said, but use the Morgan Enterprises letterhead. Let's see if they recognize the daughter they threw away. It was time to show my family exactly what their practical daughter had become. The Montgomery Technologies building hadn't changed much in 10 years. The same pretentious granite facade, the same gold lettering above the entrance, the same security guard who never looked up from his crossword puzzle. But now, walking through the revolving doors in my Armani suit, I was no longer the teenage girl they had dismissed so easily. "Miss Morgan?" A young assistant hurried forward. "The board is waiting in the main conference room. May I take your coat?" I handed her my coat, suppressing a smile. My mother had always insisted that true power dressed in designer labels. Today, I wore enough worth of clothing to fund one of William's failed startups. "Coffee?" the assistant asked. "Green tea," I replied, remembering how my mother used to mock my preference for tea over coffee. Proper brewing time, no sugar. The elevator ride to the top floor gave me time to center myself. 10 years of preparation had led to this moment. Through my network of shell companies and discrete investments, I had systematically acquired Montgomery Technologies' debt, positioned myself as their only viable lifeline, and now held their fate in my hands. The conference room doors opened to reveal a scene that almost made me laugh. My father, Robert Montgomery, sat at the head of the table, though that position would soon be mine. My mother, Elizabeth, perched beside him, her perfect posture betraying her anxiety. And William, my dear brother who had burned through my college fund and much of the family fortune, slouched in his chair, tapping away at his phone. Miss Morgan, my father stood, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. We've heard remarkable things about Morgan Enterprises. I shook his hand firmly, noting the slight tremor in his grip. The great Robert Montgomery was nervous. Good. Please, I gestured for him to sit. Let's discuss why we're here. For the next hour, I listened as they presented Montgomery Technology's current situation. The company needed a $50 million cash injection just to stay afloat. Their stock had plummeted 70% in the last quarter. And William's latest venture, another attempt at revolutionary energy storage technology, had drained their remaining reserves. We believe with proper investment, my father continued, his voice carrying that same persuasive tone he'd used when telling me to be practical about my dreams, Montgomery Technologies could return to its former glory. I opened my laptop, displaying a series of graphs on the conference room screen. Your company's decline began approximately 10 years ago, I said, watching their faces carefully, coinciding with a series of interesting investment decisions. William shifted uncomfortably. My mother's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the table. We took some calculated risks, my father defended. Calculated? I raised an eyebrow. Like investing $289,000 in an unproven energy storage concept. The room fell silent. That specific number, the exact amount of my stolen college fund, hung in the air like an accusation. How did you? William started, then caught himself. I stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Tell me, Mr. Montgomery, what would you say was your biggest mistake in business? My father cleared his throat, perhaps expanding too quickly in certain markets. No, I cut him off, turning to face them. Your biggest mistake was sitting in this room 10 years ago, thinking she would just accept your decision and fade into the background. The color drained from my mother's face. William's phone clattered to the table. My father's expression froze in dawning recognition. Catherine? I smiled, savoring the moment. Hello, Dad. Mom. William. It's been a while. This is impossible, William sputtered. You're Catherine Morgan? Actually, it's Catherine Montgomery Morgan now, legally changed. I sat back down, enjoying their shocked expressions. But you'd know that if you'd bothered to look for me these past 10 years. My mother found her voice first. Darling, we tried to find you. No, I cut her off. You half-heartedly called around for a few weeks, then decided I was being dramatic and would come home when I ran out of money. I looked at William. How did that energy storage technology work out, by the way? The one you needed my college fund for? He flushed red. There were unexpected complications. Funny, I interrupted again, pulling up another presentation. Because Morgan Enterprises' subsidiary, Tech Solutions, seems to have solved those complications quite successfully. I displayed the schematics of the energy storage system I'd helped develop, the one that had made me my first billion. My father's business instincts finally kicked in. You own Tech? Among other things. I began listing companies on the screen. Tech Solutions, Elite Academic Consulting, Morgan Global Ventures, and as of last month, approximately 40% of Montgomery Technology's outstanding debt. The room spun into chaos. William jumped up, knocking over his chair. My mother pressed her hands to her face. My father just stared, his empire crumbling before his eyes. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why not just tell us who you were?" I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "Because you needed to see me as you truly are. Not as parents facing their daughter, but as failing business people facing someone more successful than they ever imagined I could be." "What do you want?" William demanded. "Revenge?" I laughed. "Revenge? Brother dear, if I wanted revenge, I would have bought this company 6 months ago and fired you all immediately." I stood, straightening my suit. "No. What I want is to fix what you broke." "What does that mean?" My mother asked quietly. "It means I'm offering to save Montgomery Technologies. Full debt restructuring, capital injection, and technological partnership with Tech Solutions." I paused, letting that sink in. "But there are conditions." My father's business mask slipped back into place. "What conditions?" "First, William is out. No more positions, no more investment in his ventures, no more draining company resources." William started to protest, but my father silenced him with a look. "Second, you and Mom retire, Dad. The company needs new leadership, not nostalgic devotion to failed strategies." "And third?" my mother asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Third," I smiled, "you all admit that sending me away was the best thing you ever did for me. Because everything I built without the Montgomery name, without the family connections, and without your money." Silence fell over the room. My father looked at the empire I'd built, displayed on the screen behind me. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Whether from pride or regret, I couldn't tell. William slumped in his chair, finally confronting the reality that his younger sister had achieved everything he'd failed to do. "Do we have a deal?" I asked, knowing the answer before they spoke. My father nodded slowly. "We do, Miss Morgan." "Good." I gathered my things, preparing to leave. "The papers will be drawn up by tomorrow. Oh, and Mom." I paused at the door. "The local community college you suggested. They're one of my charitable foundation's biggest beneficiaries now. Turns out practical decisions can lead to extraordinary results." I walked out of the conference room, out of the building that had once represented everything I couldn't have, and into the waiting car where Maria, my first boss, now my company's chief operating officer, waited. "How did it go?" she asked, handing me a perfectly brewed green tea. "Exactly as planned," I replied, taking a sip. "Though I think I'll keep the diner story out of the official company history." She laughed. "Are you sure about this? Saving their company after everything they did?" I looked back at the Montgomery Technologies building, thinking about the scared 18-year-old girl who had left home with just $200 and a determination to prove herself. "You know what I learned in that diner, Maria? Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others built. It's building something so much greater that they're forced to acknowledge their own mistakes." "And did they?" I smiled, thinking of my father's face when he realized who I was, of my mother's tears, of William's final defeat. They will. Every time they see the new company letterhead, Montgomery Morgan Technologies. "You're keeping the Montgomery name." "Of course," I said, opening my laptop to check the markets. After all, I did promise to support the family business. I just did it my way. As we drove through the city, past the skyscrapers and offices that had once seemed so far out of reach, I thought about that acceptance letter to Princeton, still preserved in my office. I had framed it alongside my first business license, my first $1 million contract, and a simple name tag that read Kate, server, from a certain 24-hour diner. Sometimes the best future isn't the one that's planned for you, but the one you build for yourself. $1 at a time. One dream at a time. One victory at a time. And sometimes, just sometimes, $200 and an unwavering belief in yourself is worth more than all the family fortunes in the world.
The mahogany walls of my father's study seemed to close in as he signed the final document with a flourish. The scratching of his Mont Blanc pen against paper felt like nails on a chalkboard. There, he said, sliding the trust fund transfer papers across his desk. It's done. All $2 million will go to Jennifer instead. My name is Emma Chen, and at 28, I was being written off by my family for the last time. My sister Jennifer stood by the window, trying to hide her triumphant smile as she watched our father disinherit me. Emma, my mother sighed from her perch on the leather armchair, if you'd just gone to law school like your sister, if you'd just applied yourself. I did apply myself, I said quietly, watching my father's expression darken. Just not to what you wanted. Playing with computers in your apartment isn't applying yourself, he snapped, standing up to tower over his desk. Your sister made partner at Thompson & Mitchell at 32. Meanwhile, you're what? Coding websites for small businesses, living in that tiny apartment in the city. I could have told them then. Could have explained that what they saw as playing with computers was actually the development of an age-driven financial technology platform that was about to revolutionize global markets. Could have mentioned the Series B funding meeting I had next week with venture capitalists who'd already valued my company at $300 million. But I didn't. I learned long ago that my family only saw what they wanted to see. You're right, I said instead, standing up. I'm clearly a disappointment. Jennifer deserves the money more than I do. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably by the window. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of the sister I used to know, the one who'd shared ice cream with me after bad days at school, who'd helped me with my math homework before our parents' expectations had driven a wedge between us. Emma, she started, but I held up a hand. It's fine, Jen, really. Congratulations on making partner. You've earned this. As I walked toward the door, my mother called after me. Will you at least join us for dinner? Your father's reserved a table at Le Bernardin to celebrate Jennifer's promotion. I turned back one last time, taking in the scene. My father's disapproving frown, my mother's practiced worry, Jennifer's mix of triumph and guilt. The study walls were lined with law degrees and Bar Association awards. Not a single photo of me or my accomplishments in sight. I have a meeting, I said, but enjoy dinner. The drive back to the city gave me time to think. The trust fund had never been about the money. I had more than enough of my own now. It was about what it represented. My parents had set up identical trusts for Jennifer and me when we were born, meant to be released on our 33rd birthdays. But a clause allowed them to redirect the funds if they felt one of us was failing to live up to the family standards. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya, my CTO. VCs moved the meeting up to tomorrow. You ready? I smiled, thinking about the presentation we prepared. More than ready, I typed back. Time to change the game. When I reached my apartment, the tiny space my father had sneered at, I kicked off my heels and walked straight to my home office. The wall-mounted screens displayed real-time data from our AI system's latest test run. Numbers scrolled past, each one representing another successful prediction, another validation of what we built. The playing with computers my father dismissed had led to the creation of aita, adaptive trading heuristics and enhanced neural analytics, an AI system that could predict market movements with unprecedented accuracy, processing millions of data points to identify patterns human traders could never spot. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jennifer. I'm sorry about Dad, her text read. You know how he gets. The trust fund doesn't matter anyway, right? You're doing fine with your computer stuff. I stared at the message, noting how even Jennifer's attempt at kindness came with a subtle dismissal of my work. Thanks, Jen, I replied. Enjoy dinner. Turning back to my screens, I pulled up the pitch deck for tomorrow's EC meeting. The numbers were staggering. Our beta testing had shown aita outperforming traditional trading algorithms by 312%. Major banks were already quietly reaching out, hoping to get early access to the technology. A soft chime announced an incoming video call from Maya. Her face appeared on one of the screens, her usual energy somewhat subdued. "Hey," she said, "how'd it go with the family?" "About as well as expected," I replied, running a hand through my hair. "Dad signed over my trust fund to Jennifer. They're celebrating at a Bernardin right now." Maya shook her head. "Their loss. You ready to show those VCs tomorrow what real success looks like?" I pulled up another screen showing ATHENA's latest test results. "Actually, I've been thinking, what if we don't take the VC money?" Maya's eyes widened. "What? Emma, we're talking about a $50 million investment at a $300 million valuation. That's..." Small thinking, I interrupted. "Look at these numbers, Maya. We don't need VC funding. We could go public within a year, maintain complete control," and I smiled, thinking about my father's face at the IPO ceremony. "Really show them what playing with computers can accomplish." Maya was quiet for a moment, processing. Then a slow grin spread across her face. "You want to build an empire?" "I want to build something that even my father can't dismiss," I corrected. "Something that changes the way the entire financial world operates." "Your father's a corporate lawyer," Maya pointed out. "Wouldn't he have heard about ATHENA if it's as revolutionary as we think?" I laughed. "Maya, my father still uses a BlackBerry and thinks coding is something you learn at a community college. He hasn't heard about ATHENA because he's never bothered to ask what I actually do." "His loss," Maya said firmly. "So what's the play? Cancel the VC meeting?" I shook my head. An idea forming. "No, we use it. But instead of seeking investment, we pitch partnerships. Get them to open doors to their network of financial institutions. We don't need their money, we need their connections." 6 months after being disinherited, I stood in our new office space in downtown Manhattan, watching our team of engineers work on ATENA's final testing phase. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of the financial district, the same institutions that would soon be revolutionized by our technology. "Emma," Maya called from her workstation, "you need to see this." I walked over, coffee in hand, to look at her screen. The latest simulation results were beyond even our most optimistic projections. Athena wasn't just predicting market movements, it was identifying market-moving events before they happened. "Is this accurate?" I asked, leaning closer to study the data. Maya nodded, her eyes bright with excitement. "Triple verified. The AI spotted patterns in social media, news articles, and trading behavior that predicted the Morgan Stanley merger announcement 3 days before it happened. If this had been real trading instead of a simulation, we would have made billions," I finished. "Have you shown this to the compliance team?" "That's the best part," she said, pulling up another screen. "Everything's completely legal. Athena isn't using insider information. It's just better at connecting publicly available data points than any human could ever be." My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Hey sis, haven't heard from you in months. Parents are worried. Dad says your phone number at the apartment is disconnected." I smiled slightly. Of course it was disconnected. We'd moved the entire operation to a $40 million office space 6 blocks from Wall Street, but my family still thought I was playing with computers in my tiny apartment. "I'm fine," I texted back. "Just busy with work." Another buzz, this time from our head of legal, David. "SEC meeting confirmed for next week. They're interested in the compliance protocols." That was an understatement. When word had gotten out that we were developing something revolutionary in the fintech space, the SEC had practically begged for a meeting. They wanted to understand our technology before it hit the market. Smart of them, really. "Ms. Chen." Our receptionist's voice came through the intercom. "There's a Mr. Thompson here to see you. He says he's from Thompson and Mitchell." My heart skipped a beat. Thompson and Mitchell, Jennifer's law firm. One of the largest corporate law firms in the city. "Send him in," I said, straightening my blazer. James Thompson himself walked through the door, senior partner and my sister's boss. He looked exactly like the kind of lawyer my father admired. Silver-haired, perfectly tailored suit, exuding old money confidence. "Ms. Chen," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for seeing me without an appointment. I hope you'll forgive the intrusion. But when we heard rumors about what you're developing here..." "You heard rumors?" I asked, gesturing for him to sit. From whom? He smiled diplomatically. Let's just say certain financial institutions are very interested in your technology. They're our clients and they asked us to explore potential relationships. Does my sister know you're here? His smile faltered slightly. Jennifer? No, this meeting is strictly confidential. Though I must admit, I was surprised to learn you were her sister. She's never mentioned that she has a sister who plays with computers. I finished for him. I imagine she hasn't mentioned me much at all. Maya appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. Emma, sorry to interrupt, but the Goldman Sachs team is here for their demo. Thompson's eyebrows shot up at the mention of Goldman Sachs. I could almost see him recalculating my worth in his head. Mr. Thompson, I said, standing, I apologize, but I have another meeting. If you'd like to discuss potential relationships, you can contact our legal team to schedule something. Of course, he said, rising quickly. But Ms. Chen, whatever Goldman is offering, we can match it. Thompson and Mitchell represents half the major financial institutions in the city. I walked into the door, feeling a strange satisfaction. It's not about the money, Mr. Thompson. It's about changing the game entirely. I'm sure you understand. After he left, Maya gave me a knowing look. You enjoyed that, didn't you? Maybe a little, I admitted. How long until he tells Jennifer about our little operation here? Given that your sister's firm represents billions in financial interests, I'd say about 5 minutes. Sure enough, my phone buzzed again. Emma, why didn't you tell me? Jim Thompson just came back from your office looking like he'd seen a ghost. What exactly are you working on? I put my phone away without responding. There would be time for family revelations later. Right now, we had a demonstration to prepare for. The Goldman Sachs team was already waiting in our conference room. 5 executives in expensive suits, trying not to look too eager. Their presence here was a coup. Getting Goldman as an early partner would open every door in the financial world. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, standing at the head of the table. What you're about to see will fundamentally change how the markets operate. But first, I need you all to sign these NDAs. The morning of our IPO, I stood in front of my mirror adjusting my suit. Chanel, not that my parents would recognize the difference. The Wall Street Journal sat on my desk, our company's impending public offering splashed across the front page. ATE and AI set to launch biggest tech IPO of the year. Expected valuation, $800 million. My phone had been buzzing nonstop for days. First Jennifer, then my mother. Finally, even my father had tried to reach out. I'd let their messages pile up, unanswered. They'd all be at the ceremony today anyway. The invitations had gone out weeks ago. Ready for this? Maya asked, appearing in my office doorway. She traded her usual tech company casual wear for a sharp business suit. Born ready, I replied, picking up my presentation folder. How's ATE&A performing this morning? Like a dream. The latest analysis shows her predicting market movements with 99.7% accuracy. The trading floor is buzzing. Everyone knows this is going to change everything. We made our way to the stock exchange where crowds had already gathered. Financial reporters lined the entrance, cameras flashing as we approached. I caught snippets of their commentary. Youngest female CEO to take a company public. Revolutionary AI trading technology. Already has contracts with major financial institutions. Inside, the exchange was electric with anticipation. Our team had gathered near the podium, along with representatives from every major bank and financial institution in the city. And there, in the front row, sat my family. My father's face was a study in conflicting emotions, pride warring with regret, confusion battling with awe. My mother kept dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. And Jennifer just stared at me like she was seeing her sister for the first time. Emma, my father stepped forward as I approached the podium. We had no idea. No, I said calmly, you didn't, because you never asked. Before he could respond, the exchange president called me to the stage. It was time to start the ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet trading floor. 3 years ago, I started coding ATE&A in a tiny apartment. People called it playing with computers. They said I was wasting my potential. They couldn't see that I was building the future. My eyes met my father's as I continued. Today, ATE&A processes more financial data in a second than all of Wall Street could analyze in a month. She predicts market movements with near-perfect accuracy, all while operating within strict ethical and legal guidelines. But more importantly, she represents what's possible when you believe in your vision, even when no one else does. The ceremony proceeded according to tradition: speeches, handshakes, the ringing of the bell. But the real moment came when our stock price appeared on the big board. The room erupted in cheers as the numbers soared past our projected opening. By lunch, my personal stake in the company was worth over $300 million, more than 100 times the trust fund my father had signed away. After the ceremony, my family approached hesitantly. Jennifer spoke first. "Emma, I'm so sorry," she said, her lawyer's composure cracking. "All this time, when you tried to tell us about your work." "Save it," I said, but not unkindly. "You all saw what you wanted to see." My father cleared his throat. "Princess, about the trust fund." "Keep it," I interrupted. "Jennifer earned it, just like I earned this. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is believe you'll fail. It makes success that much sweeter." "But we're family," my mother protested. "We should have supported you." I looked around at my real family, Maya and our team, the people who believed in the vision when it was just lines of code in a tiny apartment. "You're right, we are family," I said. "Which is why you're all invited to dinner tonight. I've reserved the private room at Le Bernardin. I hear it's a good place to celebrate success." My father's face reddened at the reference to that dinner 6 months ago, but he managed a small smile. "We'd be honored." Later that evening, as my family marveled at our company's technology and success over expensive wine, I thought about the long road that had led here. The nights coding while they thought I was wasting time. The meetings they dismissed as playing with computers. The victory they tried to give to someone else. My phone buzzed. A message from Maya. "Stock closed at double our projected value. You're officially a billionaire." I smiled, watching my father try to explain to his country club friends how his disappointing daughter had built an empire right under his nose. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. "Emma," Jennifer said, pulling me aside, "I need to tell you something. After Jim Thompson came back from your office that day, I looked up everything I could find about aita. I started buying stock in every company that showed interest in your technology. I believed in you, even if I didn't show it." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you make money?" She grinned. "Enough to pay back that trust fund 10 times over." "Good," I said, "because I'm going to need a lawyer I can trust for our next expansion phase. Someone who understands both technology and family." Her eyes widened. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance to be part of something bigger than both of us. What do you say, sis? Ready to play with computers?" The next morning, as I walked into our office building, now officially the ATGNA Tower, I passed a young intern working on code in the lobby during her break. She reminded me of myself, back when everyone thought I was wasting time with computers. "Keep at it," I told her. "Sometimes the biggest success stories start in the smallest apartments." She looked up, recognition dawning in her eyes. "Ms. Chen, I read about how you built aita. My parents think I'm crazy for choosing programming over law school. But you have a vision," I finished for her. "Hold on to that. And remember, the people who underestimate you today will be reading about you tomorrow." As I rode the elevator to my office, I thought about legacy. Not the kind my father had tried to force on me, but the kind you build yourself, one line of code at a time. Athena wasn't just changing the financial world, she was proving that success doesn't always look like people expect it to. And sometimes, the best inheritance isn't the one you're given, it's the one you create for yourself.
The day of my parents' reading dawned bright and cold, sunlight streaming through the mahogany-paneled windows of Wilson and Associates Law Office. I sat quietly in the corner, watching my brother Marcus strut around the room in his tailored suit, already acting like he owned everything in sight. Which, if I was being honest with myself, he probably did. "Ms. Sarah Bennett?" The lawyer's voice cut through my thoughts. "Are you ready to proceed?" I nodded, gripping the arms of my leather chair. At 32, I was about to find out what my parents really thought of me, though I already had a pretty good idea. The constant comparisons to Marcus throughout our lives had made that painfully clear. Mr. Wilson adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and began reading. To our son Marcus, for his unfailing dedication to the family business and maintaining the Bennett legacy. He went on to list assets that made my head spin. The family estate in Vermont, our summer house in the Hamptons, controlling shares in Bennett Industries, and a portfolio worth millions. Marcus's smirk grew with each item. Then came my part. To our daughter Sarah. Mr. Wilson paused, shuffling his papers. We leave the painting Autumn Twilight, currently hanging in the study of our main residence. The room fell silent. Marcus didn't even try to hide his laughter. A painting? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Just a painting? It was your mother's favorite. Mr. Wilson offered weakly, clearly uncomfortable with the disparity. Marcus walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip just tight enough to hurt. Don't worry, sis. I'll make sure you get a good job in the company. Maybe in the mailroom? I shrugged off his hand and stood up. The Bennett family fortune, built over 3 generations, now belonged entirely to my brother. All I had was a single painting that my mother had bought at some small gallery years ago. I'd always thought it was pretty, a forest scene at dusk, with strange geometric shapes hidden among the trees, but it wasn't exactly a fair inheritance. Is that all? I asked Mr. Wilson. He nodded sympathetically. The painting must be collected within 7 days. I left without another word, ignoring Marcus's calls behind me. The drive to my parents' house, now Marcus's house, felt surreal. The guards at the gate gave me suspicious looks, but let me through when I explained about the painting. Inside, the housekeeper Margaret met me with tears in her eyes. "Oh, Miss Sarah," she whispered, hugging me tight. "It's not right, what they did to you." I hugged her back, fighting my own tears. Margaret had been more like a mother to me than my own mother sometimes. She helped me take down the painting from the study wall, carefully wrapping it in a blanket. "Your mother used to stare at this for hours," Margaret said softly, "especially in the last few months. Sometimes she'd mutter about numbers and patterns. We thought the illness was making her confused." I looked at the painting more closely. In the fading light of the study, the geometric shapes seemed to shift and change, creating patterns I'd never noticed before. "Numbers?" Margaret nodded. She traced the shapes with her fingers, over and over. Mr. Bennett would get so angry about it. That night, in my small apartment across town, I hung the painting on my living room wall. It was beautiful in its own way. The forest scene was painted with incredible detail, each leaf and branch precisely rendered. But those geometric shapes, they didn't quite fit with the natural elements. They seemed almost deliberate, like they were trying to tell me something. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, staring at the painting. My mother's final gift to me. Was it really just a cruel joke, a final reminder that I'd never measure up to Marcus? Or was there something more? My phone buzzed. Marcus calling again. I ignored it, like I had his last 5 calls. He probably wanted to gloat more, or maybe offer me that mailroom position. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching the painting. Autumn Twilight, by an artist named James Morrison. No major exhibitions, no auction records, barely any online presence at all. The gallery where my mother bought it had closed years ago. It was like the painting had appeared out of nowhere. A text from Marcus popped up. "Don't be bitter, sis. Come work for me. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted." I snorted. What my parents had wanted was for me to be more like Marcus, to care about profit margins and shareholders instead of pursuing my passion for art history and restoration. I'd disappointed them by choosing my own path, and now they'd made their feelings crystal clear. But something about the painting kept drawing my attention. Those shapes, they reminded me of something I'd studied in my art restoration courses. Steganography, the practice of hiding messages in plain sight. I got up and examined the painting more closely. The geometric shapes were subtly different colors than the rest of the scene, barely noticeable, unless you were looking for it. And they seemed to form a pattern. A knock at my door made me jump. It was past midnight. Who would be visiting at this hour? Through the peephole, I saw Marcus standing there, his usually perfect hair disheveled. "Sarah," he called out. "Open up. We need to talk about the painting." I stayed silent, watching him through the peephole. He'd never shown any interest in art before. Why was he here now, in the middle of the night, asking about a supposedly worthless painting? "Sarah, please." His voice took on an edge of desperation I'd never heard before. "Mom left instructions about the painting. You need to give it back." Instructions? My heart started pounding. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe there really was something hidden in those geometric shapes. "Go away, Marcus," I called through the door. "The painting is mine. It's all I got, remember?" "You don't understand," he hissed. "That painting, it's not what you think. Give it to me now, and I'll give you $5 million. $5 million? For a painting he'd laughed about just hours ago? I backed away from the door, my mind racing. Marcus was many things, but he wasn't stupid with money. If he was offering that much, the painting must be worth far more. I heard him fumbling with something. Keys? Did he still have a copy of my spare key from when I'd been sick last year? I quickly grabbed the painting off the wall and ran to my bedroom, locking the door behind me just as I heard my front door open. "Sarah." Marcus's voice echoed through my apartment. "Where are you? Where's the painting?" I held the painting close, my hands shaking. In the dim light of my bedroom, those geometric shapes seemed to glow faintly. And then I saw it, a pattern I'd missed before. The shapes weren't random at all. They formed numbers, hidden so cleverly in the forest scene that you'd never notice unless you knew exactly what to look for. "Sarah." Marcus was getting closer. "Think about what you're doing. That painting is worth more than you can imagine." I turned the painting over, inspecting the back. The original canvas was professionally mounted, but something about the framing felt off. A slight gap that shouldn't be there. My bedroom door handle jiggled. "Sarah, open this door right now." With trembling fingers, I pried at the gap in the frame. A small piece of paper fluttered out, covered in my mother's elegant handwriting. As I read the first line, my breath caught in my throat. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, you've discovered what I always knew you would. You see patterns others miss. You question what others accept. And now, my darling girl, you're about to understand why your father and brother have always been so afraid of you." The pounding on my bedroom door grew louder, but I barely heard it. I was too busy reading my mother's letter, my hands shaking as each word revealed a truth that would change everything. The numbers in the painting weren't just random shapes. They were coordinates, accounts, and passwords to something that would shake the very foundation of Bennett Industries. And my brother, still shouting outside my door, had no idea that his perfect world was about to crumble. I don't know how long I sat there on my bedroom floor, reading and rereading my mother's letter, while Marcus continued his tirade outside. My hands trembled as I absorbed each carefully written word. The numbers in the painting when combined with the access codes I've included here, will lead you to the truth about Bennett Industries. Your father and brother built their empire on stolen innovations, patents and designs taken from brilliant minds who trusted them. I was one of those minds, Sarah. And you, my dear daughter, were always meant to be my successor. A loud crash from my living room jolted me back to reality. Marcus had apparently gotten tired of asking nicely. "I'm calling the police," I shouted, already dialing 911. "Go ahead," Marcus yelled back. "I'll tell them you stole company property. That painting belongs to Bennett Industries." But I knew better now. The letter explained everything. How my mother had been a brilliant inventor in her own right. How she hidden her work in plain sight all these years. The painting wasn't just art. It was a key to a hidden database of evidence. "The coordinates will lead you to my private laboratory," the letter continued. "Everything you need is there. But be careful, Sarah. Your father and brother will do anything to keep their secrets buried." I heard Marcus's footsteps retreating, followed by my front door slamming. Taking a deep breath, I emerged from my bedroom. My apartment was a mess. Marcus had apparently searched every corner looking for the painting. But I didn't care about the chaos. I had work to do. First, I photographed every inch of the painting, capturing the geometric shapes from every angle. Then I carefully copied down the coordinates from my mother's letter. According to her instructions, I needed to overlay the shapes in a specific sequence to reveal the full set of access codes. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Margaret, our old housekeeper. "Miss Sarah, men are at the house removing all your mother's things. They're looking for something in her study. Please be careful." They were destroying evidence. I had to move fast. The coordinates led to a location in the Berkshires, about 3 hours from the city. My mother had written that she purchased the property under her maiden name, keeping it hidden from my father and brother. "The lab is underground," her letter explained. "The entrance looks like an old storm cellar, but it's equipped with state-of-the-art security. Use the first sequence of numbers from the painting to gain access." I packed quickly, laptop, the painting carefully wrapped in blankets, some clothes, and my mother's letter. As I headed to my car, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its engine running. Marcus wasn't done yet. The drive to the Berkshires was tense. The SUV followed me for the first hour, keeping a consistent distance. I took every detour and back road I could think of, finally losing them somewhere near the Massachusetts border. By the time I reached the coordinates, it was nearly dawn. The property looked abandoned at first glance, just an overgrown field with an old farmhouse in severe disrepair. But as I walked the grounds, comparing the geometric shapes in the painting to the natural landscape, I realized my mother's genius. The shapes weren't just numbers, they were a map. The seemingly random patterns of trees and rocks matched the artwork perfectly. The storm cellar was exactly where the painting indicated. Its rusted doors looked like they hadn't been opened in decades, but when I input the first sequence into a hidden keypad, they smoothly swung open to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. Motion sensor lights flickered on as I made my way down. The temperature dropped with each step, and I could hear the soft hum of ventilation systems. At the bottom, another keypad waited. This time, I needed to use the second sequence from the painting. The laboratory that emerged from the darkness took my breath away. It was like stepping into a different world. Pristine white walls, advanced equipment, and rows of computers humming quietly. But what caught my eye was the wall of patents and prototypes. Dozens of innovations that I recognized from Bennett Industries products, but with one crucial difference. They all bore my mother's original signature. "Oh my God," I whispered, moving closer to examine them. These weren't just similar to Bennett Industries technology. They were the originals. My mother hadn't just been a passive observer in the company. She had been its hidden genius. A familiar voice behind me made my blood run cold. "Impressive, isn't it?" I spun around to find my father standing in the doorway, looking exactly as he had the day he died, or at least the day we thought he died. Marcus stood beside him, a satisfied smirk on his face. "Did you really think your mother was the only one who knew about this place?" my father asked, stepping into the lab. Though I must admit, hiding the coordinates in that painting was clever. "We've been searching for this facility for months." I backed away, clutching my mother's letter. "You're supposed to be dead." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sometimes the best way to find something is to make people stop looking for it. Your mother's death was unfortunately real, but mine? Well, let's just say it served its purpose. The will reading was a trap, I realized. You wanted me to find the painting. "We needed you to leave us here," Marcus explained, moving to block the exit. "Mom changed all the security protocols before she died. We couldn't get in without the codes. And now," my father said, advancing slowly, "you're going to help us destroy everything in this lab. All evidence of your mother's work will disappear, and Bennett Industries' patents will remain secure." But they had made one crucial mistake. While they were talking, I had been backing toward my mother's main workstation. Her letter had mentioned an emergency protocol, a sequence of numbers that would activate something she called the Clarity Protocol. "Actually," I said, reaching behind me to input the sequence, "I don't think I will." The lab's lights suddenly shifted to a pulsing red, and a computerized voice announced, "Clarity Protocol activated. Broadcasting evidence to all major news outlets and regulatory agencies. Deletion impossible." My father's face contorted with rage. "What have you done?" "Mom called it her insurance policy," I said, feeling stronger with each word. "Every piece of evidence in this lab has just been transmitted to hundreds of secure locations. Patents, proof of theft, fraudulent documents, everything. Bennett Industries is about to face some very uncomfortable questions." Marcus lunged forward, but it was too late. Alarms began blaring, and the lab's security systems activated, sealing all exits. We were locked in, together with the truth that would destroy their empire. "She knew," I continued, watching their faces pale. "She knew you would try to bury her contributions, just like you buried her innovations. So she made sure the truth would come out, one way or another." Through the lab's small windows, I could see police lights approaching. Someone, probably the lab's security system, had alerted local authorities. My father and Marcus exchanged panicked looks as the sound of sirens grew closer. The painting that had started everything still sat wrapped in blankets by the door. Those seemingly worthless geometric shapes had led me exactly where I needed to go. My mother's final gift wasn't just a painting, it was justice. And as I watched my father and brother realize their perfect world was crumbling, I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. The real story of Bennett Industries was about to be told, and this time, no one would be able to hide the truth. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of police statements, news reports, and corporate chaos. I watched from my hotel room as Bennett Industries' stock plummeted. Years of carefully constructed lies unraveling in real time. Bennett Industries CEO found alive, arrested for fraud. The headlines screamed, corporate giant built on stolen patents. Mother's revenge, the hidden genius behind Bennett Tech. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke. Journalists, lawyers, former employees, everyone wanted to hear my side of the story. But I was only interested in one call. Margaret, our former housekeeper, who had more revelations to share. Your mother knew this day would come, she told me, her voice heavy with emotion. That's why she made me promise to give you this after the truth came out. An hour later, I sat in Margaret's small living room, holding another letter from my mother. This one was different, not instructions or coordinates, but a story. Her story. My dearest Sarah, it began. Now that you know the truth about Bennett Industries, it's time you understood your own history. You were never less than your brother. You were always meant for something more. As I read, the pieces of my life slowly shifted into focus. My mother hadn't been just another victim of my father's schemes. She had been playing a long game, preparing me for this moment from the very beginning. Those art history classes I'd taken, they weren't a waste of time as my father had claimed. They had trained my eye to spot patterns, to understand hidden meanings in plain sight. My work in restoration had taught me patience, precision, and the ability to reconstruct truth from fragments. Every time your father pushed you away from the business, my mother wrote, every time he favored Marcus, he was unknowingly helping to prepare you for this moment. You learned to think differently, to see what others missed. While Marcus was learning to maintain the lies, you were learning to expose them. A knock at Margaret's door interrupted my reading. A woman in a crisp suit stood outside, holding a briefcase. Ms. Bennett, I'm Alexander Chen from the SEC. We need to discuss your mother's patents. The next few hours were a crash course in just how extensive my mother's preparations had been. She hadn't just documented the stolen patents. She had continued inventing, working in secret in her underground lab. The painting's coordinates had led not only to evidence of past theft, but to innovations that could transform the industry. Your mother filed these patents under a trust, Alexandra explained, spreading documents across Margaret's coffee table, a trust that names you as the sole beneficiary. My hands trembled as I looked at the paperwork. Dozens of patents, all legally protected, all now belonging to me. Not just the old innovations my father had stolen, but new ones, years ahead of current technology. Bennett Industries doesn't just owe you restitution for the stolen patents, Alexandra continued. They've built their entire infrastructure around your mother's technology. They can't operate without it. So what does that mean? I asked, though I was beginning to understand. It means, Ms. Bennett, that you now effectively control the company that cast you aside. While my father and Marcus sat in jail awaiting trial, I walked into Bennett Industries headquarters the next morning not as the forgotten daughter, but as its new owner. The board of directors, desperate to save the company from complete collapse, had no choice but to accept my terms. Standing in my father's former office, I found another surprise, a wall safe hidden behind the painting that had once hung there. The combination? The final sequence of numbers from my mother's painting. Inside was a personal diary detailing every innovation he had stolen, every inventor he had betrayed. But more importantly, it contained a list of names, people like my mother who had been cheated out of their rightful recognition. 1 month later, I stood on a stage at a hastily convened press conference announcing the company's new direction. Bennett Industries was built on stolen dreams, I told the assembled crowd. Today we begin making things right. We're establishing a foundation to compensate every inventor who was wronged by the previous management. But more than that, we're transforming the company into what it should have been all along. an incubator for innovation, where brilliant minds are celebrated, not exploited. The painting that started it all now hangs in my new office, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things are hidden in plain sight. The geometric shapes that once concealed my mother's secret now represent something else. The pattern of a better future, one built on truth instead of lies. Marcus wrote to me from prison, alternating between threats and pleas for help. I sent back a single photograph. The painting, now hanging exactly where our father's portrait used to be. He would understand the message. His world of deception was over. My father maintained his silence, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth he had fought so hard to bury was now his legacy. The great John Bennett would be remembered not as a visionary businessman, but as a thief who stole his own wife's genius. Late one evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, Margaret brought me one final letter from my mother. This one had been timed to arrive exactly 1 month after the company's transformation began. My darling Sarah, it read, if you're reading this, you've done more than just expose the truth. You've begun to rebuild from the ashes of deception. I never wanted you to inherit a corrupt empire. I wanted you to have the chance to build something honest, something worthy of your heart. I traced my fingers over her handwriting, feeling closer to her than ever before. The worthless painting had been anything but worthless. It had been the key to everything. More than that, it had been my mother's way of showing me that I had inherited something far more valuable than money or status. I had inherited her vision for a better world. 2 years later, Bennett Industries, now renamed Aurora Innovations, is unrecognizable from what it once was. We've become a leader not just in technology, but in ethical business practices. The foundation has helped dozens of inventors reclaim their stolen innovations, and our incubator program has launched countless new careers. The painting still hangs in my office, its geometric shapes now a familiar comfort. Sometimes, late at night, I could swear they shift slightly, as if my mother is still there, leaving me new patterns to unravel, new truths to discover. But the most important truth was there all along, hidden in plain sight, just like those numbers. Success built on lies will always crumble, but success built on truth and justice will stand the test of time. Marcus was released from prison last week. He sent me a message asking to meet, to talk about rebuilding our family. I haven't responded yet. Some patterns, I've learned, are better left unchanged. Instead, I spend my time focusing on the future. The company hosts an annual innovation fair where young inventors can showcase their ideas without fear of theft. Last year's winner was a young woman whose story reminded me of my mother. Brilliant, underestimated, but unwavering in her vision. As I handed her the award, I saw my mother's painting reflected in the glass trophy. The geometric shapes seemed to dance with approval, reminding me that sometimes the greatest inheritances aren't the ones we can hold in our hands, but the ones that transform us from within. The worthless painting had given me something priceless. The truth about my past, control of my future, and most importantly, the chance to ensure that no other brilliant mind would ever be silenced or stolen from again. And that, I know, would make my mother prouder than any fortune ever could. I stared at the elegantly set dinner table, watching steam rise from the perfectly arranged Sunday roast. The familiar scent of rosemary and thyme filled our family's dining room, but tonight something felt different, heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. "Emily, pass the potatoes," my father said without looking at me. His voice carried that stern edge I'd grown familiar with over the past few months. The one that suggested I was barely worth acknowledging. I was 32, single, and according to my family, the disappointment of our prestigious Williams lineage. What they didn't know was that I'd spent the last 6 years quietly building something they couldn't begin to understand. "Did you hear about Marcus?" my mother asked, her perfectly manicured hands gesturing toward my younger brother. "He just made junior partner at his law firm, youngest in the company's history." Marcus smirked from across the table. At 29, he'd always been the golden child, the one who followed the expected path: law school, prestigious firm, country club membership, everything our parents had mapped out. "That's wonderful," I said softly, taking a small bite of roast beef. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for signs of jealousy or resentment. I gave them neither. "Speaking of success," my father began, placing his fork down with deliberate slowness, "we need to discuss the house situation." My stomach tightened. I'd been waiting for this moment. 6 years ago, when I left my corporate job to start my own real estate investment company, they'd laughed, called it a phase, said I'd come crawling back when reality hit. Instead, I'd worked in silence, building a portfolio that now included 12 properties across 3 states. But they didn't know that. They thought I was barely surviving, living in the old family home out of their generosity. The same home my grandmother had left to me in her will, much to everyone's shock. "Emily," my father continued, his voice growing harder, "your mother and I have decided it's time for a change. Marcus needs a proper family home now that he's making partner. Somewhere to start his own family." I took another small bite, chewing slowly. "I see. Don't act dense," Marcus cut in. "You've been living there rent-free for years. It's time someone responsible took over. Someone with a real career." My mother nodded in agreement. "We've already spoken to the family lawyer. The house should have gone to your father anyway. Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly when she made that will." The insult to my grandmother's memory stung more than their dismissal of me. She'd been the only one who saw me clearly, who understood why I spent weekends studying real estate markets instead of attending society functions. "So," my father said, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a document, "we need you to sign this. It transfers ownership back to the family trust, where it belongs." I glanced at the paper but didn't reach for it. "And if I don't?" Marcus laughed sharply. "Come on, Em. You can barely afford groceries. How long do you think you can keep up the property taxes? The maintenance? The mortgage payments?" If they'd bothered to check, they'd have known the mortgage was paid off 3 years ago. By me. But they never checked. Never asked. Never saw past their own assumptions. "We're being generous," my mother added. "We'll give you 3 months to find a new place. Maybe that little apartment complex on the east side. The one where your cleaning lady lives." The contempt in her voice made my teaspoon clink against china as I set it down. They'd never approved of Maria, who'd not only cleaned our family home for 20 years, but had become my first business partner, helping me identify undervalued properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods. "The house belongs to me," I said quietly, "legally and morally." My father's face darkened. "Then you leave us no choice." He stood up, his imposing frame casting a shadow across the table. "Leave your keys and get out. This house belongs to the family now. We'll handle this through our lawyers." I looked at each of them in turn. My father, rigid with authority he'd assumed was absolute. My mother, lips pursed in disapproval she perfected over years. Marcus, practically glowing with anticipated victory. Slowly, deliberately, I reached into my purse and pulled out my house keys. The same keys my grandmother had handed me on her deathbed, along with a whispered piece of advice. Sometimes silence is the best strategy. I placed them on the table with a soft clink. "Thank you for dinner," I said, standing up. "And for making this easier than I expected." "Easier?" Marcus scoffed. "You're being kicked out." I smiled faintly. "We'll see." As I walked to the door, my father called out, "Don't bother trying to fight this, Emily. You can't afford the legal fees, and no bank will help you." I paused at the threshold, thinking about the documents waiting in my office, about the carefully orchestrated plan I'd set in motion the moment I heard whispers of their scheme 3 months ago. "Good night," I said softly, and closed the door behind me. In my car, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to my lawyer. "It's time. Execute tomorrow morning." Then I drove home, my home, and prepared for what would happen when the mortgage company called them at 9 a.m. sharp with news that would shatter their carefully constructed reality. Because while they'd been busy underestimating me, I'd been busy building an empire. And tomorrow, they'd learn exactly what their disappointment of a daughter had become. The next morning, I sat in my home office, watching the autumn sunlight filter through tall windows. The antique grandfather clock, another gift from my grandmother, showed 8:57 a.m. In exactly 3 minutes, my family would receive a call that would change everything. My phone buzzed. A message from Maria. "They just pulled up in the driveway. Your father, mother, and Marcus. They look angry." I smiled, remembering the conversation I'd had with Highland Mortgage Corporation last week. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. At precisely 9:00 a.m., I heard the doorbell ring. Then aggressive knocking. "Emily," my father's voice boomed through the door. "Open up immediately." I pressed the intercom button. "I'm in a meeting. Please wait in the parlor. Maria will let you in." I could practically hear my mother's disdain at being greeted by the housekeeper, but they had no choice. As they settled into the parlor, my phone lit up with an incoming call. "Robert Chen, Senior VP at Highland Mortgage." "Everything's proceeding as planned," he said. "I just spoke with your father. He wasn't pleased to learn about the transfer." "I imagine not," I replied calmly. "Thank you, Robert." I opened my laptop, checking my portfolio dashboard one last time. Everything was in place. 6 years of careful planning, of quiet acquisitions, of strategic patience, all leading to this moment. The parlor door burst open. My father stormed in, face flushed, waving his phone. "What is the meaning of this? The mortgage company says you've transferred the loan to your corporation? That you own not just this house but half the properties in the Heights district." Behind him, my mother clutched her designer handbag like a shield. Marcus looked less smug now, his lawyer's mind finally beginning to grasp the situation. I turned my laptop around, showing them the portfolio dashboard. "Would you like to sit down? This might take a while to explain." "Explain what?" Marcus snapped. "How you've been deceiving us." "No," I said quietly. "How you've been deceiving yourselves." I pulled up the first document, the original deed to our family home. "When grandmother left me this house, you all assumed I couldn't handle it, that I'd fail. What you didn't know was that she also left me her real estate investment guidelines, her strategies, her vision." My mother sank into a leather armchair, her composure cracking. "But you've been struggling. Working from home. No office, no employees." I clicked to the next screen. A satellite view of the Heights district, with properties highlighted in blue. Those aren't signs of struggle, Mother. They're signs of strategy. Every property in blue belongs to Williams Capital Investment Group, my company. Impossible, my father whispered. That's nearly 40 properties. 47, I corrected, including the building where Marcus's law firm rents their top-floor office space. I bought it through a subsidiary last year. Your rent helps fund my new acquisitions. Marcus collapsed into a chair, his face pale. The merger meeting room, the one they suddenly renovated last month. My building manager mentioned you liked the changes, I said with a small smile. I'm glad. I chose the design myself. My father's hands were shaking now. The mortgage company said, they said you've paid off over $780,000. I finished for him. Yes, 3 years ago. The house has been fully owned by my corporation since then. I just let you all believe otherwise because, well, it was simpler that way. But how? My mother demanded. Where did you get the capital? I thought about the nights I'd spent studying market trends, the weekends exploring emerging neighborhoods with Maria, the relationships I'd built with local business owners and developers, all while they assumed I was failing. I started small, I explained, used my savings to buy a foreclosed duplex, renovated it with Maria's help. Yes, Mother, our housekeeper is actually my business partner and owns 15% of the company. We flipped that property for triple the investment, then leveraged it for larger purchases. I pulled up another document, my company's current valuation. The number made my mother gasp. She couldn't finish the sentence. More than the family trust? I supplied. Yes, significantly more. My father straightened his tie, his businessman instincts finally overriding his anger. Why tell us now? Why not sooner? Because you needed to show your true colors first, I said calmly. I wanted to see if you really tried to take my home, the home grandmother trusted me with, and you did. I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the garden where I'd first dreamed of building something of my own. Now we can discuss new terms. You can continue living in the family properties. Yes, I own those too, but with formal lease agreements, market rate rent, professional terms. You charge your own family rent? My mother asked incredulously. The same way you were ready to make me homeless. I turned back to face them. Yes, business is business, isn't it, Father? That's what you always taught us. Marcus stood up, straightening his expensive suit. The family lawyers will already know. I cut him off. I hired them last year when I acquired their building. They work for me now, too. The silence that followed was deafening. Years of assumptions, of dismissals, of quiet condescension, all shattered in a single morning. My father was the first to speak again. What do you want? Respect, I said simply. Not as your daughter. You've made your feelings clear on that front. But as a businesswoman who's built something substantial, something real. I handed each of them a folder containing new lease agreements for their respective properties. You have until Friday to sign. After that, we can discuss alternative arrangements. And if we refuse, Marcus challenged, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. I smiled, remembering my grandmother's words about silence and strategy. Then I'll have to give my other tenants first right of refusal on those properties. I believe your law firm's competitors have been quite interested in that top-floor office space. As they left my office, folders clutched in shaking hands, I heard my mother whisper to my father, "Did you know? All this time, did you have any idea?" "No," he replied, sounding older than I'd ever heard him. We never really looked. I sat back down at my desk, letting out a long breath. Maria appeared with a cup of tea, her special blend that had gotten me through countless late nights of planning. "They finally see you," she said, placing the cup beside me. I nodded, thinking about the long journey from that first small duplex to now. "They see the power," I corrected. "They don't see me yet, but maybe now they'll start looking." My phone buzzed with messages from other property owners in the Heights, eager to discuss acquisitions. The empire I'd built quietly was about to become very visible. But first, I had a company to run, tenants to meet, and a grandmother's legacy to honor. The family drama could wait. After all, I had all the time in the world now, and all the power too. 1 month after the confrontation in my office, I stood at the window of my newly opened headquarters in downtown Chicago. The entire top floor of the Morrison Building, another recent acquisition, offered a panoramic view of the city I'd slowly been reshaping. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Can we talk? Alone?" In the weeks since the revelation, my family had processed things differently. Mother had taken to calling daily, oscillating between apologetic reminiscence and thinly veiled attempts to understand my sudden success. Father had retreated into stoic silence, signing the lease agreements without comment. But Marcus had been suspiciously quiet. "Come by the office at 2, I texted back. Sarah, my executive assistant, appeared at my door. "The Henderson Group is here for the merger discussion." I nodded, straightening my blazer. "Send them in." The meeting went smoothly. They'd been trying to acquire one of my smaller properties for months. Now they were selling their entire portfolio to me instead. Funny how quickly things change when people realize who really holds the power. At precisely 2 p.m., Marcus arrived. He looked different. Less polished, more human somehow. The swagger was gone. "Nice office," he said, glancing around. "Better than my firm's." "Your firm's lease is up for renewal next month," I replied, gesturing for him to sit. "We should discuss that too." He sank into the chair across from my desk. "That's partly why I'm here. They're making cuts. The merger fell through after the clients learned about the ownership changes." I studied him carefully. And I'm being let go," he admitted. "Apparently, having your landlord as an estranged sister isn't great for business." I leaned back, letting the information settle. "What do you want, Marcus?" He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from childhood. "Understanding, I guess. How did you do it? All of it? Right under our noses?" I thought about all the family dinners I'd sat through, listening to them praise his accomplishments while dismissing mine. All the hints I'd dropped that they'd ignored. "I learned from grandmother," I said finally. "Not just about real estate, but about patience. About letting people underestimate you while you build something undeniable. She always said you were different," he murmured. "Special. I just thought." "You thought she was being kind to the failing granddaughter," I finished. "Everyone did. That was useful." I opened my laptop, pulling up a document I'd prepared weeks ago, waiting for this moment. "Your firm isn't failing because of our family drama," I told him. "It's failing because their business model is outdated. Their client acquisition strategy is weak, and their market analysis is surface level at best." He blinked. "How do you know all this?" "Because I've been studying them for years, just like I study every tenant, every competitor, every potential opportunity." I turned the laptop toward him. This is a preliminary analysis of where they're bleeding money and how to fix it. Why show me this? Because I'm offering you a job, I said simply. Not out of family obligation, but because you're smart when you're not blinded by ego. I need someone to head our legal department as we expand into new markets. The shock on his face was almost comical. You want me to work for you? With me, I corrected, as an equal partner in the legal side of the business. But understand something. This isn't about family. This is business. You'll earn your place, or you'll lose it, just like anyone else. He stared at the contract I placed before him. Does Father know about this offer? Father doesn't make my business decisions anymore, I replied. Neither does Mother, or anyone else. That's the first lesson you'll need to learn if you accept. Marcus picked up the contract, reading it carefully. His lawyer's instincts hadn't completely abandoned him. The salary is less than I make now, he noted. The base salary is, I agreed. But the equity compensation is significantly higher. Another lesson. Build ownership, not just income. A small smile tugged at his lips. Grandmother taught you that too. Among other things. I stood, walking to the window again. She taught me that real power isn't in what you show people. It's in what you build while they're not looking. He signed the contract without further negotiation, another first. As he left my office, he paused at the door. I'm sorry, Emily, for everything. I know, I said quietly. Now prove it by helping me build something even bigger. That evening, I visited grandmother's grave, placing fresh flowers beside her headstone. The autumn wind rustled through nearby trees as I sat on the small bench we'd often shared. You were right, I said softly. About everything. About letting them think what they wanted while I built what I needed. About patience being more powerful than pride. I told her about Marcus, about the expansion plans, about the empire that had grown from her initial lessons. I like to think she would have been proud, not just of the success, but of how I'd achieved it. My phone buzzed again. Mother, asking about Sunday dinner. This time, she suggested having it at my house. A small acknowledgement of the new reality. I texted back a simple yes. Let them come. Let them sit at my table, in my home, in my success. Let them finally see what had been there all along. A woman who turned their underestimation into an empire. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch most carefully. Sometimes the child they dismiss becomes the force they can't ignore. And sometimes, just sometimes, silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. I looked up at the darkening sky, feeling the weight of everything I'd built, everything I'd become. Thank you, grandmother, I whispered, for teaching me the power of being underestimated. Then I walked back to my car, ready to continue building, growing, leading. Not for them anymore. Never again for them. But for myself, and for every other person who's been told they're not enough. Because I wasn't just Emily anymore. I was the CEO of a real estate empire, the owner of half the city's prime properties, and living proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't in what you say. It's in what you build while they're not looking.
The crystal ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel sparkled with 1,000 points of light, each crystal chandelier casting rainbow prisms across the faces of elegantly dressed guests. I stood in the shadows near the entrance, watching the scene unfold before me like some bizarre theater production. The bride, my sister Olivia, floated through the crowd in her designer wedding gown, accepting congratulations with practiced grace. Our parents, George and Margaret Wilson, followed in her wake like proud satellites, their faces glowing with the kind of joy they'd never shown for me. "Just sign here, Ms. Martinez," the wedding coordinator whispered, extending a tablet with the final payment authorization for the venue. I suppressed a smile at the false name I'd used to purchase the Rosewood Hotel chain 3 years ago. If only they knew that Elena Martinez, the mysterious hotel magnate, was actually Elena Wilson, the daughter they declared dead a decade ago. I scrawled my signature and handed back the tablet, adjusting the elegant mask that covered the upper half of my face. The masquerade theme had been Olivia's idea, though I doubted she realized how perfectly it served my purpose. Behind their own masks, not even my parents recognized the daughter they'd erased. The ceremony was beautiful, I murmured to the coordinator, my voice carrying the slight Spanish accent I'd cultivated for my Elena Martinez persona. "Your staff has done an excellent job." She beamed at the praise, unaware that I signed her paychecks. "Thank you, Ms. Martinez. We're so honored you came personally to oversee the Wilson wedding. They're one of Boston's most prominent families, you know." I knew all too well. The Wilsons had been Boston aristocracy for generations, their shipping empire dating back to the 1800s. That legacy of success and perfection had been everything to my parents, and the reason they found it so easy to erase their defective daughter. My crime? Refusing to marry the man they'd chosen for me, the heir to a rival shipping company. At 22, fresh out of business school with dreams of modernizing the family company, I dared to suggest that arranged marriages were outdated. That maybe the shipping industry needed innovation more than it needed mergers through matrimony. The argument that followed still echoed in my nightmares. My father's rage, my mother's cold disappointment, and finally the ultimatum: marry Jonathan Porter or be cut off completely. I chose freedom. The next morning, I emptied my trust fund, a mere $50,000 they'd forgotten to freeze, and disappeared. I spent the first month in a cheap motel, teaching myself everything I could about modern business practices, digital transformation, and venture capital. I changed my appearance, adopted a new accent, and built Elena Martinez from scratch. What I didn't know then was that my parents had chosen to deal with my departure in the most dramatic way possible. Instead of admitting their daughter had defied them, they told everyone I died in a sailing accident off the coast. They even held a funeral, complete with an empty casket and tearful eulogies about their beloved Elena, taken too soon. I learned about my own death 6 months later when I tried to contact my younger sister. The email I sent bounced back, but not before I saw her social media profile picture, Olivia in black, standing beside our parents at my memorial service. That was the moment Elena Wilson truly died and Elena Martinez was born. "Ms. Martinez?" The coordinator's voice pulled me back to the present. "Would you like to be seated for dinner?" I nodded, following her to a table near the back of the ballroom. Close enough to observe everything, far enough to maintain my cover. The irony of paying for my sister's wedding venue and owning the mansion our parents still lived in wasn't lost on me. Over the past decade, I'd systematically purchased every property the Wilsons used, every hotel they frequented, and a controlling interest in most of their business partners. They just didn't know it yet. My father's voice suddenly carried across the room, loud enough to reach my table. "Everyone, if I could have your attention, please." The crowd quieted as George Wilson raised his champagne glass. He cut an impressive figure in his tuxedo, silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. 10 years had added distinguished lines to his face, but hadn't diminished his commanding presence. "Today is a day of joy, celebrating the marriage of my only daughter, Olivia, to the love of her life." Only daughter. The words hit like a physical blow, even after all these years. "But it's also a day tinged with bittersweetness," he continued, his voice thick with practiced emotion. "I can't help but think of our beloved Elena, Olivia's sister, who left us far too soon. She would have loved to see this day." Beside him, my mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, the perfect breathing mother still mourning her lost child. If only they knew that lost child was sitting 30 feet away, controlling more wealth and power than the Wilson family had accumulated in 6 generations. A server appeared at my elbow. "More champagne, Ms. Martinez?" I accepted the glass, using the moment to collect myself. I hadn't come here for revenge, or at least, that's what I told myself. I'd built my empire through genuine innovation, transforming struggling businesses into modern powerhouses. The fact that I now controlled most of my family's business interests was just convenient. Such a shame about their older daughter. The elderly woman seated beside me whispered, clearly hoping to share gossip with the mysterious hotel owner. The poor girl died in a sailing accident. They say she was quite troubled before the end, defying her parents, refusing a brilliant marriage match. Some even whispered she might have, you know. She made a vague gesture. Done it on purpose. My fingers tightened around the champagne flute. Of course they'd implied my death was suicide. It fit their narrative of the rebellious daughter who couldn't handle the pressure of their expectations. Better than admitting the truth, that I'd chosen freedom over their suffocating control. The sound of clinking glass drew everyone's attention. Olivia had stood to make her own speech, her new husband beaming beside her. My little sister had grown into a stunning woman, though her beauty had a brittle quality that reminded me of our mother. Thank you all for being here today, she began, her voice carrying the same finishing school polish I'd once been forced to learn. As father said, this day is perfect in almost every way. The only thing missing is my dear sister Elena. I took a slow sip of champagne, watching her performance. Elena was more than my big sister. She was my best friend, my protector, my role model. Olivia's voice wavered perfectly. When we were little, she used to tell me that anything was possible if you were brave enough to chase your dreams. I just wish. She paused for dramatic effect. I just wish she could see that I finally found my dream. The crowd murmured sympathetically. I fought the urge to laugh. Olivia had been 12 when I left, old enough to understand exactly what our parents had done. She'd chosen their side, happily stepping into the role of perfect only daughter. The sister who'd supposedly been her best friend hadn't even rated a phone call to warn me about my impending death. As dinner was served, I found myself studying the head table. My parents sat there with Olivia and her new husband, along with his equally wealthy family. They looked like something out of a society magazine. Perfectly groomed, perfectly poised, perfectly false. 10 years ago, their perfect facade had crushed me. Now I saw them clearly, small people desperately clinging to outdated power, unaware that the world had changed around them. The shipping industry they dominated for generations was transforming, and they hadn't adapted. Their empire was crumbling, propped up only by the secret investments I'd made through shell companies. Ms. Martinez? A man in an expensive suit approached my table. I recognized him as James Porter, my almost father-in-law, though he aged considerably. I hope you're enjoying the evening. I must say, we were surprised and honored when we heard you be attending personally. I smiled behind my mask. I make it a point to oversee special events at my flagship properties, Mr. Porter, especially for such distinguished families. He preened at the compliment. Yes, well, the Wilsons and Porters have been pillars of Boston society for generations, though I must admit recent years have been challenging. Oh, I kept my tone merely polite, though I knew exactly how challenging things had been for both families. My companies had slowly acquired controlling interests in their major shipping routes, modernizing operations and squeezing their profit margins. The industry isn't what it used to be, he said, sighing heavily. These tech startups, these modern logistics companies, they're disrupting everything. Why, just last month we lost our biggest client to some upstart called Phoenix Maritime. I managed not to smile. Phoenix Maritime was one of my first acquisitions, transformed from a failing local shipper into a digital logistics powerhouse. Progress can be difficult to navigate, I offered diplomatically. Progress, he scoffed. In my day, business was built on relationships, on family connections. Did you know my son was supposed to marry George Wilson's older daughter? Now that would have been a merger worth celebrating. But the girl had other ideas. He shook his head. Tragic. What happened to her? Though perhaps for the best, given her rebellious nature. The crystal flute in my hand threatened to shatter under my grip. Before I could respond, a commotion at the head table drew everyone's attention. My mother had stood up suddenly, swaying slightly. Apparently the champagne had flowed too freely. I simply must say, she announced, her voice carrying that peculiar precision of the elegantly drunk. How wonderful it is to see all our dear friends here, especially those who supported us after we lost our Elena. I sat perfectly still, watching the train wreck unfold. Such a difficult time, she continued, dabbing at her eyes. Having to tell everyone that our daughter, that she, well, the shame of it all. But we preserved the family name, didn't we, George? We gave her a proper send-off, even if she didn't deserve. Margaret. My father's voice cut through her rambling like a steel blade. Perhaps you should sit down. But the champagne had loosened something in my mother's perfect facade. Oh, but darling, I simply must tell Ms. Martinez what an honor it is to have her here. Such a successful woman, and self-made at that. Nothing at all like our poor Elena, who thought she could reject her family obligations and succeed on her own. She laughed, the sound brittle as breaking glass. As if a Wilson could ever survive without family connections. Why ever she didn't even make it a month before. That's enough. My father stood, his face flushed with anger. Margaret, you're making a scene. The ballroom had gone silent, hundreds of guests watching my mother's meltdown with horrified fascination. Olivia was hiding her face in her hands, her new husband patting her shoulder awkwardly. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the marble floor. The sound drew my mother's attention, and she focused on me with the unsettling intensity of the truly drunk. Ms. Martinez, she called out, you simply must tell us your secret. How does a woman with no family name, no connections, build such an empire? My Elena thought she could do the same, you know. Thought she was smarter than generations of Wilson business sense. And now she's what, mother? The words left my mouth before I could stop them, my careful accent slipping. My mother froze, something flickering across her face. Recognition, impossible as it was. But the moment passed. She blinked at me owlishly, confused by the question from a stranger. My father had reached her by then, taking her arm firmly. I apologize for my wife, he said smoothly. The excitement of the day combined with the memories. Please, everyone, enjoy your dinner. He led my mother away, probably to sleep off the champagne in one of the hotel's luxury suites. Suites I owned, in a hotel I owned, just like I owned the mansion they still lived in and controlling interest in the companies they thought were still theirs. I sank back into my chair, hands trembling slightly. I come too close to revealing myself, letting old pain override a decade of careful planning. The elderly woman beside me patted my arm sympathetically. Don't mind them, dear, she said. Old money families like the Wilsons, they can't handle change. Today's world belongs to people like you, self-made, forward-thinking. Why, I heard your hotel chain is expanding into shipping and logistics now. Among other things, I murmured, recovering my accent. She had no idea that my hotel chain was just the tip of the iceberg. Through various shell corporations and holding companies, Elena Martinez controlled an empire worth billions, built specifically to systematically dismantle everything the Wilsons had ever valued. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of small talk and subtle observation. I watched my sister dance with her new husband, my father smooth things over with embarrassed guests, my mother nowhere to be seen. They looked exactly like what they were, relics of a dying era, clinging to appearances while their real power slipped away. When I finally stood to leave, the wedding coordinator rushed over. Ms. Martinez, will you be staying the night? We've prepared the presidential suite. No, I said quietly, watching my father lead a round of toasts. I think I've seen enough family drama for one evening. She laughed nervously, clearly uncertain how to respond to her boss's dry tone. I handed her a thick envelope, a wedding gift for my sister, though she'd never know who it was really from. Make sure the bride and groom have everything they need, I instructed, and send some water and a spear into Mrs. Wilson's room. She'll need it tomorrow. As I walked out of the crystal ballroom, I heard my father's voice one last time, to family, the most precious thing we have. I didn't turn around. Elena Wilson was dead, after all, they'd made sure of that themselves. But Elena Martinez was very much alive, and she was just getting started. In my car, I pulled out my phone and dialed my assistant. Maya, execute phase 2. It's time the Wilsons learned exactly who they're dealing with. The next few weeks would change everything. But that's another part of the story. The morning after Olivia's wedding, I sat in my penthouse office overlooking Boston Harbor, watching the Wilson shipping vessels crawl across the water like tiny, obsolete insects. My mother's drunken outburst had accelerated my timeline, but perhaps that was for the best. 10 years of silent accumulation had positioned all the pieces perfectly. Now it was time to play the game. The numbers are in from last night, Maya announced, entering with her tablet. My assistant of 8 years was the only person who knew both Elena Martinez and Elena Wilson. The Wilson Porter wedding cost them just over $300,000. They put it all on credit. I nodded, unsurprised. And their current financial position? Critical. Maya pulled up detailed spreadsheets. Wilson Shipping's quarterly losses have hit $12 million. They've mortgaged everything they own, which technically means they've mortgaged everything you own since you hold all their properties through shell companies. They're 3 months behind on payments to Phoenix Maritime, which means they're 3 months behind on payments to me. I finished. What about the Porter merger they're counting on? James Porter's company isn't in much better shape. The merger would be like tying 2 stones together and expecting them to float. I smiled, remembering James Porter's condescending comments at the wedding. The man who'd once thought himself worthy of arranging my marriage was now drowning in debt, his company hemorrhaging clients to my more efficient operations. Send notices to all their major clients, I instructed. It's time for Phoenix Maritime to raise its rates. Let's see how many stay loyal to outdated shipping methods when modern logistics could save them millions. Maya made a note, then hesitated. There's something else. Your father has called an emergency board meeting for Wilson Shipping tomorrow morning. Finally, I've been waiting for this moment, carefully orchestrating it through a decade of strategic moves. Prepare the paperwork. It's time for Elena Martinez to make her first public appearance at Wilson Shipping. Are you sure? Maya's concern was evident. Once you start this. They buried their daughter to save face, I said quietly. Now they'll learn exactly what that decision cost them. The next morning, I dressed with particular care. A blood-red Armani suit that projected power, Louboutin heels that clicked like weapons on marble floors, and a small gold compass pendant that had once belonged to my grandmother. The only Wilson who had truly loved me. The Wilson Shipping headquarters hadn't changed in 10 years. The same imposing granite building, the same brass nameplate declaring founded 1847. The same portrait of my great-grandfather glowering in the lobby. But there was an undercurrent of tension today. Nervous whispers and darting glances as employees noticed my arrival. Ms. Martinez. The receptionist jumped to attention. We weren't expecting. That is, the board meeting is private. Not anymore. I handed her a thick envelope. My credentials. As the majority shareholder of Phoenix Maritime and holder of significant Wilson Shipping debt, I have every right to attend. Her hands shook as she verified the paperwork. I watched her face pale as she realized exactly how much power Elena Martinez wielded. Of course. 14th floor boardroom. The elevator ride gave me a moment to center myself. In my ear, Maya's voice provided updates through a discreet earpiece. All board members present. Your father's trying to push through an emergency restructuring plan. He still thinks he can save the company without outside help. The boardroom doors were heavy oak, stretching from floor to ceiling. I paused for a moment, hearing familiar voices through the wood. Can't accept these terms, my father was saying. Phoenix Maritime is trying to steal our company piece by piece. We don't have a choice, George, another voice responded. We're bleeding clients, our ships are outdated, and this mysterious Elena Martinez owns half the ports we use. I pushed the doors open. The conversation died instantly. 12 men in expensive suits stared at me. Old money, old power, old ideas. At the head of the table, my father stood frozen mid-gesture, his face darkening as he recognized the woman who'd attended his daughter's wedding. Ms. Martinez, he managed finally. This is a private meeting. Not anymore. I strode to the table, my heels echoing in the silence. Please don't let me interrupt your discussion of my company's terms. Your company? He spat the words. Phoenix Maritime is nothing but an upstart using digital gimmicks to steal established clients. Wilson Shipping has survived for 6 generations, and will survive for precisely 12 more days. I cut in smoothly. Unless you accept the merger terms I'm about to offer. I placed a folder on the table. Inside was the culmination of 10 years' work. Documents proving my ownership of their buildings, their warehouses, their homes. Evidence of their mounting debts, their failed modernization attempts, their desperate efforts to maintain appearances while their empire crumbled. This is impossible, my father whispered, flipping through pages. These properties, our house, the hotel chain, all belong to me, I confirmed. Along with controlling interest in most of your remaining clients' companies. Face it, Mr. Wilson, you're not just losing, you've already lost. He slammed the folder down. Who are you? Some tech billionaire trying to dismantle a legacy business. You have no idea what family tradition means. I felt my carefully constructed mask crack, just a little. Family tradition. I took off my designer sunglasses, meeting his eyes directly, like the tradition of forcing your children into loveless marriages, or the tradition of declaring them dead when they refuse to comply. The color drained from his face. No, he whispered. It's not possible. Elena, one of the older board members, breathed, recognition dawning. My God, Elena Wilson. I smiled, not pleasantly. Elena Martinez, actually. I took the name after you killed me. Makes for a better corporate image than being the dead daughter of a failing shipping magnate. Chaos erupted in the boardroom. Board members shouted questions. My father stumbled back into his chair, and somewhere in the building, an emergency alarm began to wail. Enough. My voice cut through the noise like a whip. You have exactly 24 hours to accept the merger proposal. If you refuse, I call in all outstanding debts and sell your remaining assets to my subsidiaries. Your choice. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and father, you might want to check on mother. I hear she's still recovering from quite a spectacle at Olivia's wedding. Security guards burst in as I walked out, responding to some panic button my father had probably pressed. I smiled at them as I passed. They worked for me too, though they didn't know it yet. In the elevator, Maya's voice came through my earpiece. Well, that was dramatic. They always love theatrics, I replied. I learned from the best. Your mother's waiting in the lobby. I stiffened. What? She arrived about 5 minutes ago. Looks like she's mostly recovered from the champagne. The elevator doors opened and there she was. Margaret Wilson, Boston society matron. Perfectly coiffed even in the middle of her world collapsing. She stood near the great-grandfather's portrait, and for a moment I saw myself at 18, standing in that same spot while she lectured me about family duty. Ms. Martinez, she said as I approached, her voice brittle as frozen glass. Or should I say, Elena will do. I cut her off. But only in private. Publicly, I'm still very much dead. Your choice, as I recall. She flinched. We did what we had to do. For the family name. The family name? I laughed, the sound echoing off marble walls. Take a look around, Mother. The Wilson name isn't worth the brass it's engraved on. The only thing keeping this company afloat is my money, which makes it my name on the line. You're enjoying this, she accused. Destroying everything we built. No, I stepped closer, close enough to smell her familiar perfume. I'm saving everything you destroyed. The company will survive, modernize, grow. The Wilson name will continue, just not in Wilson hands. Her perfectly painted lips trembled. We really thought you were dead, poverty-stricken, failed? I supplied. You thought your rebellious daughter couldn't possibly succeed without the family's help. That's why you erased me, because the alternative was admitting you might be wrong. A tear slipped down her cheek, carving a path through expensive foundation. Elena, please. We can fix this. Come home. I'm not that naive girl anymore. I walked past her toward the entrance. You have 24 hours to accept the merger. Don't worry, I'll let you keep the house. Consider it a wedding gift to Olivia. Outside, my driver held the car door. Boston's summer sun felt warm on my face, so different from the artificial chill of the Wilson building. I looked back once, seeing my mother's silhouette through the glass doors, small and lost in the lobby of her crumbling empire. Maya was waiting in the car. Phase 2 complete, she reported. The board is in chaos, our lawyers are standing by, and rumors already spreading through the financial district. What's our next move? I checked my phone, seeing dozens of missed calls from my father, from board members, from family friends suddenly realizing who Elena Martinez really was. Let them talk. Let them panic. The next 24 hours would determine the fate of everything they built, and everything I built to replace it. Now, I said, we wait, and then we show them exactly what the dead daughter can do. The next phase would change everything. But that's another part of the story. The 24 hours I'd given the Wilson Shipping Board felt like the longest of my life. I spent them in my penthouse office, watching the sun set and rise again over Boston Harbor while my phone lit up with increasingly desperate messages. From my father, we need to talk. This isn't the way. From various board members, let's discuss terms privately. From family friends, Elena, "Darling, we never believed." From Olivia, surprisingly. "Is it really you?" I answered none of them. Instead, I focused on the final pieces of my plan, making sure every detail was perfect. The media had already caught wind of the story. Boston's supposedly dead heiress returning as a billionaire CEO to take over her family's company. The headlines wrote themselves. The Wall Street Journal is on line 1. Maya announced, entering with fresh coffee. They want an exclusive. Not yet. I took the coffee, breathing in its familiar comfort. Let them speculate for now. The real story comes after the board's decision. And if they refuse the merger? I smiled, remembering my mother's face in the lobby. They won't. Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from the board's secretary. The vote was in. Unanimous acceptance of Phoenix Maritime's merger terms. My father hadn't even voted against it. Perhaps he finally recognized the inevitable. Set up the press conference, I told Maya. 2 hours, main lobby of Wilson Shipping. Tell them Elena Martinez will be making a major announcement. And Elena Wilson. I touched the compass pendant at my neck, thinking of my grandmother. She's done hiding. The lobby was packed by the time I arrived. Reporters jostled for position, cameras flashed, and a crowd of Wilson Shipping employees lined the balconies above. My father stood with the board members on a small stage, looking like he aged a decade overnight. I made them wait 10 minutes, a small petty pleasure, but I'd earned it. When I finally walked in, the crowd fell silent. I wore Wilson blue today, a power suit that matched the company's logo, with my grandmother's compass catching the light. No more hiding behind sunglasses or Spanish accents. "Thank you all for coming," I began, stepping to the podium. "My name is Elena Martinez, or, as some of you might remember, Elena Wilson." The room erupted. Cameras clicked frantically, reporters shouted questions, and somewhere in the crowd, I heard my mother gasp. I held up a hand for silence. 10 years ago, the Wilson family announced my tragic death, a sailing accident off the coast. The truth is somewhat less dramatic. I simply refused an arranged marriage and left to build my own life. My parents, finding this embarrassing, chose to bury an empty casket rather than admit their daughter had defied them. My father stepped forward, face dark with anger, but security, my security, held him back. In the decades since, I continued, I built what they said was impossible. Phoenix Maritime revolutionized shipping logistics, embracing modern technology while companies like Wilson Shipping clung to outdated methods. We grew rapidly, acquiring ports, properties, and clients, including many former Wilson assets. I turned to face the board members directly. Today, I'm announcing the merger of Wilson Shipping with Phoenix Maritime. The Wilson name will continue, but the company will be completely restructured. All current board members will be retiring with generous compensation packages. More chaos, more shouted questions. I noticed Olivia slip into the back of the room, still in her honeymoon tan, watching with wide eyes. "And now," I said, "I'll take questions. Ms. Wilson, did your family know you were alive?" "No, they were quite committed to my death." "Ms. Martinez, how did you build your empire?" "The same way I would have modernized Wilson Shipping, had I been allowed, by understanding that tradition without innovation is just slow decay." "Mr. Wilson, your response to your daughter's return?" My father stepped forward, and for a moment I saw something crack in his proud facade. "Elena, we thought. You thought I'd fail," I finished for him. "That's the problem, father. You never saw who I really was." He aged another decade before my eyes. "We did what we thought was right." "No," I corrected quietly. "You did what was easy. Erasing you was easier than admitting I might have had better ideas. Declaring me dead was easier than explaining why I left. Even now, giving up control is easier than watching your company collapse under its own weight." "Elena," my mother's voice, somewhere in the crowd. "Please." I ignored her, addressing the reporters again. "The merged company will retain the Wilson name out of respect for its history. But make no mistake, this is a complete transformation. We're moving into the future, whether the old guard likes it or not." More questions flew, but my attention was caught by Olivia pushing through the crowd. She looked different from the polished bride of 2 days ago, younger somehow, more like the sister I remembered. "You were there," she said, reaching the stage. "At my wedding. You watched us all pretend to mourn me." I raised an eyebrow. "Yes." "I knew." Her voice dropped so only I could hear. Sometimes I'd look at old pictures and think I saw you in the background. At charity events, business functions, I thought I was going crazy. You aren't. Why didn't you tell me? Back then, when they first. Would you have kept my secret? I studied her face, seeing the answer. No, you were always their perfect daughter. The one who'd never disobey. She flinched. I was 12. Old enough to know right from wrong. I softened slightly, seeing real pain in her eyes. But young enough to be afraid of ending up like me. A tear slipped down her cheek. I missed you. The real you, not the sanitized dead sister they talked about at parties. For the first time, I felt my own composure crack. I missed you too. But I couldn't be who they wanted. I had to be myself. Ms. Martinez. A reporter's shout broke the moment. What happens to the Wilson family now? I turned back to the crowd, professional mask firmly in place. They'll retain their personal assets, those that aren't already legally mine, and receive fair compensation for their shares. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to save a company that lost its way. And the family relationships. I looked at my father, defeated on his stage, my mother crying quietly in the crowd. Olivia, torn between the sister she'd lost and the parents she'd chosen. Some things, I said quietly, can be fixed with money or business deals. The Wilsons declared their daughter dead rather than accept her choices. That doesn't go away just because she came back successful. The press conference wound down after that. Reporters got their sound bites, photographers got their shots of the prodigal daughter triumphant, and gradually the crowd dispersed. I stayed on stage, watching my parents huddle with their lawyers while Olivia hovered uncertainly between us. Maya appeared at my elbow. The papers are ready to sign. Private conference room. I nodded. Give me a minute. When the lobby was almost empty, I walked to where my parents stood. Up close, they looked old and tired, nothing like the towering figures of my childhood. The lawyers will explain everything, I said professionally. You'll be comfortable. The house is yours for life, the vacation properties too. I'm not interested in leaving you destitute. Just powerless, my father said bitterly. Like you left me? I smiled without warmth. The difference is, I'm giving you a choice. Sign the papers, accept a comfortable retirement, maybe even try to rebuild something resembling a real family relationship. Or fight me, lose everything, and prove that pride really is more important than blood. My mother reached for my hand. I let her take it, feeling her expensive rings press into my palm. We thought we were protecting you, she whispered. The business world, it's so hard for women. I pulled away. I know exactly how hard it is. I succeeded not because of the Wilson name, but because you forced me to fight without it. Olivia stepped forward. Elena, what about me? You're my sister, I said simply. My door is open when you're ready to know me as I am, not who they wanted me to be. I turned to go, then paused. Oh, and mother, the next time you're drunk at a party in my hotel, try not to brag about how you erased your daughter. It's bad for both our reputations. The paperwork took less than an hour. Signatures were scratched, hands were shaken, and just like that, Wilson Shipping belonged to the daughter they'd buried. The company would keep its name but nothing else. New board, new methods, new future. Later that night, I stood in my office watching the Wilson ships in the harbor. Soon they'd be repainted with the Phoenix Maritime logo, upgraded with modern technology, integrated into my larger transportation network. The Wilson legacy would live on, just not in the way my parents had imagined. Maya brought a bottle of champagne. To the merger. To the truth, I corrected, taking a glass. Sometimes it takes a death to bring it to life. Your sister's been calling, she said carefully, and your grandmother's compass. I touched the pendant. Grandma knew. She left me this compass the day before I disappeared, said sometimes the right path isn't the easy one. Smart woman. She would have loved seeing this. I sipped the champagne, remembering. She always said the Wilson pride would sink us faster than any storm. My phone buzzed. Olivia again. This time I answered. Can we talk? She asked quietly. Really talked, just us? I looked out at the harbor where the Wilson ships floated in darkness. Come over. It's time you saw who your sister really is. After I hung up, I asked Maya to order dinner for two. It would be a long night of explanations, of bridging the gap between the sister who died and the woman who rose from those ashes. But maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this. I wasn't Elena Wilson anymore. That girl had died exactly as her parents claimed. But Elena Martinez was stronger, successful beyond their wildest fears, and finally, absolutely free. The merger would save their company. The money would save their lifestyle. But the truth, that would save me. And in the end, that's what this story was really about. Not revenge, not money, not even family. It was about a girl who had to die to become who she was always meant to be. I raised my glass to the dark harbor. To Elena Wilson, I whispered, "May she rest in peace." Then I turned away from the window and went to meet my sister, ready to begin whatever came next. I always knew my sister Rachel would try to ruin my wedding. I just didn't expect her to do it quite so spectacularly. My name is Emma Collins, and I met the love of my life, James, while he was waiting tables at a small Italian restaurant in downtown Boston. At least that's what everyone thought. The truth was far more interesting, but we'll get to that. He's a waiter? Rachel had sneered when I told my family about him. Really, Emma? With your education and background, you could do so much better. That was Rachel, always measuring everything by status and money. She'd married a hedge fund manager right out of college and never let anyone forget it. The fact that I, her Yale-educated younger sister, would settle for someone who served pasta for a living was apparently a personal affront. What she didn't know was that James had a very good reason for working at that restaurant. As the secret heir to the Romano restaurant empire, he believed in learning the business from the ground up. Every aspect of it, from washing dishes to serving customers. But we'd agreed to keep that quiet until after the wedding. Let them judge, Eid said, his dark eyes twinkling. It's more fun that way. The morning of our wedding dawned bright and clear. The small church we'd chosen was perfect. Intimate, elegant, nothing like the extravagant affair Rachel had thrown for her own wedding 3 years ago. I was in the bridal suite, my mother fussing with my veil, when Rachel burst in. "You can't go through with this," she declared, still wearing her designer dress like armor. "Do you know what people are saying? That you've lost your mind." "The only person saying that is you, Rachel," my mother said tiredly. She'd grown weary of Rachel's drama over the past few months. "Mom, she's throwing her life away. He probably just wants her money." I couldn't help but laugh at that. My modest teacher's salary compared to James's hidden billions was almost comical. But Rachel took my laughter as defiance. "Fine," she snapped. "Ruin your life. But don't come crying to me when you're living in some cramped apartment above a restaurant." If she only knew about the penthouse James and I had already picked out, or the private island where we'd be spending our honeymoon. But I held my tongue, remembering our agreement. The truth would come out soon enough. The ceremony began beautifully. James stood at the altar, looking handsome in his tailored suit, which Rachel had probably assumed was rented. Our closest friends and family filled the pews, though notably fewer on my side since Rachel had convinced several relatives it wasn't worth attending. Then came the moment that would be talked about for years to come. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. Rachel stood up. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, her voice echoing through the church. "Emma, you're making a huge mistake. You're better than this. You're marrying a waiter, for God's sake. How pathetic can you be?" The church fell silent. James squeezed my hand gently, and I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "Should we tell her?" he whispered. I shook my head slightly. Not yet. Rachel wasn't finished. She stormed toward the altar, her expensive heels clicking against the stone floor. "Everyone here knows this is a joke. Emma, you were supposed to be the smart one, the successful one. And now look at you, throwing it all away on some server." "Rachel," our father warned from the front pew, but she ignored him. "When this all falls apart, don't expect any sympathy from me. You've made your bed, probably a very cheap one, now lie in it." With that final shot, she turned and stormed out of the church, leaving stunned silence in her wake. The minister cleared his throat awkwardly. "Shall we continue?" I looked up at James, saw the love and amusement dancing in his eyes. "Yes," I said firmly. "Let's continue." The rest of the ceremony was perfect, made even better by Rachel's absence. As we exchanged rings, I couldn't help but think about what was coming. The reception would be at one of James's family's most exclusive restaurants, one that had been mysteriously closed to the public for the day. Rachel had no idea that her very public tantrum was about to backfire in the most spectacular way possible. and I couldn't wait to see her face when she realized just how wrong she'd been about everything. But first, we had to get through the pictures and the drive to the reception. James helped me into the rented vintage Rolls-Royce, actually from his personal collection, as our guests showered us with rice. "Ready for Act 2? He murmured in my ear. I smiled, thinking of the scene that was about to unfold at the reception. "More than ready. Do you think she'll show up?" "Oh, she'll show up," he said confidently. "People like Rachel can't resist a chance to feel superior. She'll come just to watch what she thinks will be a cheap, embarrassing reception." He was right, of course. Rachel might have stormed out of the ceremony, but there was no way she'd miss the chance to criticize every detail of our celebration. She had no idea she was walking into a reveal that would leave her speechless. As we drove toward the reception, I thought about how perfectly everything had played out. Rachel's outburst, while hurtful, had only made what was coming sweeter. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about letting someone's own actions set the stage for their humiliation. The Romano, James's family's flagship restaurant, loomed ahead. Its elegant facade and prime location usually hosted celebrities and dignitaries. Today, it would host a revelation that would change my family dynamic forever. "Here we go," James said, helping me out of the car. "Ready to show your sister who she really just insulted in front of everyone?" I smoothed my dress and took his arm. "Let's give her a show she'll never forget." The doors of the Romano swung open, and I heard the collective gasp from our arriving guests. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors and hand-painted murals. White-gloved servers circulated with champagne, each bottle worth more than what most people thought James made in a month. "This must be a mistake," I heard someone whisper. "How could they afford this place?" Rachel arrived fashionably late, probably expecting to find us in some budget banquet hall. She froze in the doorway, her perfectly made-up face twisted in confusion. "There's been a mix-up," she said loudly, approaching me. "This is the Romano. They don't do wedding receptions, ever." "They made an exception," James said smoothly, appearing at my side. "For family." Before Rachel could respond, an elderly man in an impeccable suit approached us. Everyone in the restaurant business knew Antonio Romano, the patriarch of the Romano Empire. He was notoriously private, rarely seen in public. "James," he said warmly, embracing my husband. "My grandson, finally married to his beautiful Emma." The silence in the room was deafening. Rachel's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "Grandson?" she choked out. "What do you mean, grandson?" Antonio turned to her, his eyes sharp despite his age. "And you must be the sister who caused such a scene at the church. Tell me, what was it you called my grandson?" "Ah, yes, some server." The color drained from Rachel's face as the truth sank in. James wasn't just a waiter. He was the heir to one of the largest restaurant empires in the country. The Romano Group owned hundreds of high-end establishments across the globe, along with hotels, vineyards, and real estate. I didn't know," she stammered. "Clearly," Antonio said dryly. "Perhaps next time you'll remember that true class isn't about what someone does for a living, but how they treat others." James squeezed my hand as Rachel stood there, mortified. Around us, guests were beginning to whisper as they pieced together the truth. The simple wedding ceremony followed by this lavish reception. The waiter, who was actually restaurant royalty. "Why did you tell me?" Rachel demanded, finding her voice. "You let me believe. You let me make a fool of myself." "Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly. "Would you have treated James differently if he'd known who he really was?" "Because that's exactly why we didn't tell anyone. We wanted to know who our true friends were." "But I'm your sister." "Yes," I said. "Which makes your behavior even worse. You couldn't even be happy for me unless you approved of my choice's social status." Antonio cleared his throat. "If you'd like to leave, no one would blame you. You've already provided enough entertainment for one day." Rachel's face flushed deep red. She looked around the room, seeing the judgment in everyone's eyes. The same people who had witnessed her outburst at the church were now watching her humiliation. "I should go," she muttered. "Stay," James said unexpectedly. Everyone turned to look at him. "Stay, enjoy the reception. Consider it a chance to start over, to see people for who they are, not what they own or what they do for a living." I looked at my husband with pride. Even after Rachel's awful behavior, He was showing more class than she ever had. She hesitated, then slowly nodded. I'd like that, and I owe you both an apology. Yes, you do, Antonio agreed. But perhaps that can wait until after the first dance. I believe my grandson and his bride have waited long enough to celebrate properly. As James led me to the dance floor, I caught glimpses of Rachel's face. She stood alone, watching us twirl beneath the chandeliers, probably calculating how many times she'd have to apologize before she could start bragging about her connection to the Romano family. She'll never change completely, James murmured, reading my thoughts as always. No, I agreed. But maybe she'll think twice before judging someone based on their job again. The reception continued like a fairy tale. Course after exquisite course of Romano specialties, wine from the family's private reserve, and stories from James's time working his way up through every position in the restaurant. He insisted on starting at the bottom. Antonio told our captivated guests. Said he needed to understand every aspect of the business. Most trust fund kids want to start in a corporate office. Not mine, James. I watched Rachel's face as she realized just how wrong she'd been. The waiter she dismissed had shown more work ethic and humility than her hedge fund husband ever had. As the night went on, I saw her try to approach us several times, probably to apologize or attempt damage control. But there was always someone else wanting to talk to us, to share a story or offer congratulations. Her social punishment would last a bit longer. After all, she'd spent months making me feel small. A few hours of humility wouldn't kill her. Besides, we had other things to focus on, like the honeymoon villa waiting for us on the Romano family's private island. But that was another surprise for another day. For now, I was content to dance with my husband, surrounded by people who loved us for who we were, not what we owned. And if my sister learned something from all this, well, that was just icing on our very expensive wedding cake. A year passed and life settled into a new rhythm. James and I moved into our penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, and I continued teaching while he took on more responsibilities within the Romano group. We kept things low-key, just as we always had, but Rachel struggled with our newfound dynamic. You could at least let me host a proper housewarming, she complained one afternoon, eyeing our minimalist decor. This place deserves to be shown off. That's exactly why we don't show it off, I replied. Some things are better kept private. She didn't understand. She'd spent the past year trying to rebuild her reputation, dropping the Romano name whenever possible. Her social media was suddenly full of posts about my sister and her husband's amazing restaurants and family dinner at the Romano. James found it amusing. At least she's promoting the business, he'd say with a shrug. But everything changed when Rachel's perfect world started crumbling. Her hedge fund husband, Michael, got caught in a scandal. Insider trading, fraud, the works. Suddenly, the wealth she'd lorded over everyone was gone, frozen by federal investigators. She showed up at our door late one night, mascara streaking down her face. They're taking everything, she sobbed. The house, the cars. Michael's facing jail time. I don't know what to do. I led her to the living room, where James was working on his laptop. He looked up, concern crossing his face. I need help, Rachel admitted, the words clearly costing her pride. I don't know how to start over. James and I exchanged glances. This was the moment. Would we help the sister who tried to ruin our wedding, who'd only accepted us after learning about our wealth? There's an apartment, James said finally, above one of our smaller restaurants in Cambridge. It's nothing fancy, but it's a start. Rachel's eyes widened. You do that? After how I treated you? On one condition, I added. You work in the restaurant, learn the business from the ground up, just like James did. You mean wait tables? She looked horrified. Among other things, James said, wash dishes, bus tables, learn to cook. Understand what it means to earn your way. Rachel was quiet for a long time, probably wrestling with her pride. Finally, she nodded. Okay, I'll do it. But will you help me? Show me how. That was the moment I knew my sister might actually change. The next few months were transformative. Rachel moved into the small apartment, traded her designer clothes for sensible shoes and work uniforms. She cried the first time she had to clean a bathroom, broke 3 plates her first night serving, and burned herself twice learning to cook. But she didn't quit. I watched her transform from someone who looked down on service workers to someone who defended them. She started leaving bigger tips at other restaurants, calling out rude customers, appreciating the complexity of work she once dismissed. 6 months into her new life, I visited her at work. She was expediting orders, her hair tied back, completely focused on her task. No makeup, no pretense, just honest work. "She's doing well," James said, appearing beside me. "The staff actually likes her now." "Think she's learned her lesson?" He smiled. "I think she's learned several." "Want to tell her the other news?" I nodded, waiting until her shift ended. Rachel joined us at a corner table, exhausted but somehow more genuine than I had ever seen her. "How would you feel about managing this place?" James asked casually. Rachel's eyes widened. "What?" "You've earned every position, earned the respect of the staff. The current manager is moving to our new location in Chicago. The job's yours if you want it." "But why?" "After everything." "Because you proved us wrong," I said softly. "We thought you couldn't change, that you'd always be the person who cared more about status than substance, but look at you now." Tears filled her eyes. "I was awful. To both of you. I let money and status blind me to what really matters. And now," James prompted, "now I know that what matters is who people are, not what they own or what they do for a living." She wiped her eyes. "I'm actually proud to be a server now. Proud of what I've learned, what I can do." Later that night, as James and I walked home, he squeezed my hand. "Your sister finally found her way." "Our way," I corrected. "The hard way, the honest way." "Think she's ready for the family reunion next month? When everyone finds out she's managing one of our restaurants?" I laughed, imagining Rachel proudly wearing her Romano restaurant uniform to the fancy gathering. "I think she's finally ready to be herself, no matter what anyone thinks." And that was the greatest victory of all. Not the wedding reveal, not the humbling aftermath, but watching my sister discover who she really was beneath all the designer labels and social climbing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about helping someone grow into a better person. Rachel's transformation from judgmental socialite to hardworking restaurant manager was proof that people can change if given the right opportunity and motivation. As for James and me, we continued living simply, working hard, and remembering that true wealth isn't about what you have. It's about who you are and how you treat others. That's a lesson worth more than all the Romano billions combined. The call came on a Tuesday morning, interrupting my usual coffee and emails routine. When I saw Rebecca's name flash across my screen, I knew it wasn't going to be pleasant. It never was with her. "Hello, Rebecca," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "I've sold a house," she announced without preamble, her tone dripping with satisfaction. "The papers are signed, and the new owners move in next week. I hope you've learned your lesson about respecting your elders." My name is Olivia Matthews, and the house Rebecca was so smugly talking about was my childhood home. The one my father had left me when he passed away 2 years ago. Or at least, that's what Rebecca thought. "The house?" I repeated, fighting to keep the amusement out of my voice. "You mean Dad's house?" "Don't play dumb, Olivia. You know exactly which house. The one you've been squatting in rent-free since your father died." "Well, that ends now. I found buyers who will actually appreciate the property." I took a slow sip of my coffee, remembering the meeting I'd had with Dad's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, just days after the funeral. Rebecca had no idea about that meeting, about the documents we'd signed, or about the real ownership of the property. "That's interesting," I said carefully. "And you're sure everything's legal?" She scoffed. "Of course it's legal. I'm his widow, and the house was in his name. You may have been his precious daughter, but I have rights too. Maybe next time you'll think twice before questioning my decisions about the remodeling." Ah, there it was. The real reason behind this power play. 3 months ago, I'd stopped Rebecca from gutting the house's historic features, the hand-carved banisters, the original hardwood floors, the stained glass windows my father had lovingly restored over the years. She'd wanted to modernize everything, to erase every trace of the home my father had created. "I see," I said. "Well, I hope you got a good price for it." "Don't worry about the price," she snapped. "Just make sure you're out by next Friday. The new owners are eager to start their renovations." I could almost see her smirking, imagining me scrambling to pack up and move out. If only she knew. "Thanks for letting me know," I replied. "Goodbye, Rebecca." As I hung up, I couldn't help but smile. Rebecca had always underestimated me, just as she underestimated my father's foresight. She thought she knew everything about our family's affairs, but there was so much she didn't understand. I picked up my phone again and dialed Mr. Harrison's number. "Olivia," he answered warmly. "I was expecting your call." "She did it," I said. "She actually tried to sell the house." "Did she now?" I could hear the amusement in his voice. "Well, this should be interesting. Would you like me to set things in motion?" "Yes, please. And Mr. Harrison, make sure the buyers understand exactly what's happening. I don't want innocent people caught in Rebecca's mess." After hanging up, I walked through the house, my house, running my hand along the walls my father had painted, the door frames he'd restored, the window seats where we'd spent countless hours reading together. Every inch of this place held memories, stories, pieces of our life together. Rebecca had married my father 5 years ago, when I was 23. At first, she played the part of the caring stepmother perfectly, all smiles and sweet words. But after the wedding, her true colors started showing. She tried to drive a wedge between Dad and me, made snide comments about our close relationship, and constantly pushed to change things about our home. Dad saw through her eventually, but by then his health was failing. In his final months, he called me into his study one evening while Rebecca was at her weekly spa appointment. "Livy," he'd said, using his old nickname for me, "I need you to trust me. Things aren't what they seem with Rebecca, and I've made arrangements. When the time comes, go see James Harrison. He'll explain everything." I'd wanted to ask more questions, but Dad had been so tired, so weak. 2 weeks later, he was gone. Rebecca had barely waited until after the funeral to start asserting her authority over the house and everything in it. She'd moved my father's belongings into storage, redecorated rooms without consulting me, and made it clear that she considered herself the sole owner of the property. What she didn't know was that my father had seen this coming. The meeting with Mr. Harrison had revealed just how carefully Dad had planned everything. The house, despite appearances, had never been in his name alone. Through a series of legal maneuvers I didn't fully understand, he protected it, and me, from exactly this kind of situation. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "I expect the keys on my desk by Thursday. Don't make this difficult, Olivia." I smiled, typing back, "Don't worry, Rebecca. Everything will work out exactly as it should." She didn't respond, probably thinking she'd won. But the real show was about to begin, and I had front row seats to watch her carefully constructed plans fall apart. My father had always told me that patience was a virtue. Sometimes, he'd say, the best response is to simply wait and let people reveal their true nature. Well, Rebecca had certainly revealed hers. Now it was time for her to learn about mine. I spent the rest of the morning going through some old photos I'd found in Dad's study. There was one of us working on the house together, covered in paint and sawdust but grinning like fools. Another showed us in the garden he'd planted, surrounded by the roses he'd lovingly tended. Rebecca had wanted to dig up those roses last spring, claiming they were old-fashioned. I'd stopped her then, just as I was about to stop her now. My phone rang again. "Mr. Harrison." "The wheels are in motion," he said. "The buyer's lawyer has been notified of the situation. They're understandably upset with Rebecca, but relieved they found out before money changed hands." "How long until she finds out?" "I'd say by this afternoon. Their lawyer is drafting a strongly worded letter as we speak. Would you like me to be present when she receives it?" I thought about it for a moment. No, I decided. Let her deal with it alone. She needs to understand exactly what she's done. As you wish, but Olivia, be prepared for the fallout. People like Rebecca don't take humiliation well. He was right about that. Rebecca had always been proud, always needed to be in control. Finding out that she tried to sell a house she had no right to, that she'd made a fool of herself in front of potential buyers, it would hit her hard. But then again, that was exactly the point. The fallout came faster than I expected. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone exploded with notifications, multiple missed calls, and increasingly furious texts from Rebecca. "What have you done?" The last message read, all caps conveying her rage. I was sitting in the garden among my father's roses when she pulled into the driveway. Her Mercedes screeched to a halt, and she stormed out, waving what I assumed was the lawyer's letter. "You conniving little witch," she screamed, her carefully maintained facade cracking completely. "You knew about this all along." I remained seated, calm despite her fury. "Knew about what, Rebecca?" Don't play innocent with me. She thrust the letter in my face. The trust, the property transfer, all of it. You and James plotted this behind my back. No, I corrected her gently. Dad and Mr. Harrison arranged it. I just followed his instructions. Her face contorted with rage. Your father would never do this to me. This has to be a mistake. Actually, I stood up, brushing dirt from my jeans. Dad did exactly this to protect both me and the house. He saw through you, Rebecca. He knew exactly what you tried to do after he was gone. She took a step back, her designer heels sinking slightly into the soft garden soil. That's impossible. He trusted me. He loved me. Did he? I asked quietly. Or did he just let you think he did? The color drained from her face as the implications of my words sank in. My father, the man she thought she fooled completely, had outmaneuvered her from beyond the grave. The house was never in his name. I continued, watching her process each revelation. He transferred it to a trust years ago, long before he met you. I'm the sole beneficiary. You had no right to try to sell it. You're lying, she whispered, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Check the property records, I suggested. They're all public. Dad made sure of that too. He wanted everything to be transparent when the time was right. Rebecca's hands were shaking now, crumpling the lawyer's letter. The buyers, they're threatening legal action. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Almost as humiliating as trying to throw your stepdaughter out of her own house. I countered. Or maybe as humiliating as spending years pretending to care about someone just to get their money. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. You don't understand anything about my relationship with your father. I understand more than you think. Dad told me everything before he died, about the prenup you refused to sign, about the mysterious withdrawals from his accounts, about the men you met with while he was in the hospital. Her eyes widened. He knew. He knew everything, Rebecca. He just waited, watched and planned. Like father, like daughter, I suppose. She took another step back, her expensive suit now stained with garden dirt. This isn't over, she threatened, but her voice lacked conviction. Actually, it is, I replied, pulling out my phone. I've recorded this entire conversation. Would you like me to add it to the file Mr. Harrison is building about your attempts to illegally sell property you don't own? For the first time since I'd known her, Rebecca was speechless. She stood there, surrounded by my father's roses, looking completely lost. I'll make this simple, I said. Leave the house, leave me alone, and most importantly, leave my father's memory alone. If you try anything else, any more schemes, any more attempts to take what isn't yours, everything comes out. The affairs, the money, all of it. You wouldn't dare, she hissed. It would damage your precious father's reputation. I smiled, channeling the same quiet strength I'd always admired in Dad. His reputation can handle the truth, Rebecca. Can yours? She stared at me for a long moment, calculation visible in her eyes. Finally, her shoulders slumped slightly. Fine, she spat. Keep the house. Keep your little victory, but don't think this means you've won. I already have, I said simply. I won the moment Dad saw you for who you really are. She turned and stormed back to her car, her heels sinking into the grass with each angry step. As she drove away, I noticed she dropped the lawyer's letter in the garden. Picking it up, I smoothed out the crumpled paper. The legal language was complex, but the message was clear. Rebecca had no claim to the house, had never had any claim to it, and her attempt to sell it constituted fraud. My phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Harrison. How did she take it? About as well as we expected, I replied. But I think she's done. Your father would be proud, he wrote back. He always said you were stronger than anyone knew. I looked around the garden, at the roses Dad had tended so carefully, at the house he protected so thoroughly. He'd known this day would come, had prepared for it in ways I was only beginning to understand. Rebecca had thought she was teaching me a lesson about respect. Instead, she'd learned one about underestimating people, both the living and the dead. The weeks following Rebecca's confrontation brought unexpected changes. The house felt different somehow, lighter, as if a shadow had been lifted. I spent my evenings restoring rooms to their original state, undoing Rebecca's hasty modernization attempts. One evening, while sorting through boxes in Dad's study, I found a letter addressed to me in his familiar handwriting. The envelope was dated just days before his death. My hands trembled as I opened it. My dearest Livy. If you're reading this, then everything has played out as I expected. Rebecca has probably tried to take the house by now, and you've learned of the trust arrangements I made with James. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything while I was alive. Rebecca was watching too closely, and I needed her to believe she had won. You see, I discovered her true nature about a year into our marriage, but by then she had already shown her hand. The mysterious illness that landed me in the hospital? Not so mysterious after all. I had James investigate the occasional dizzy spells, the confusion, the gradual weakening. Rebecca had been adding something to my evening tea. Not enough to kill me quickly, but enough to make it look like natural decline. I played along, let her think she was succeeding. Meanwhile, I made arrangements to protect you and everything we built together. This house isn't just a building, Livy. It's our legacy, every repair and restoration a memory we shared. I know it must have hurt, watching me seem to choose her over you those last few months. Please forgive me for that deception. I needed her to believe she had complete control so she wouldn't suspect what was coming. There's more you need to know. Check behind the loose brick in the study fireplace. I left something there for you. Remember, strength isn't always about confrontation. Sometimes it's about patience, about waiting for the right moment to act. I love you, my darling girl. Dad. I sat there for a long time, tears falling onto the letter. Everything made sense now, his distant behavior in those final months, the cryptic conversations, the way he'd insisted on having tea alone with Rebecca every evening. Moving to the fireplace, I found the loose brick easily. Behind it was a small USB drive and another note. Show this to the police when you're ready. The drive contained videos from hidden cameras Dad had installed, footage of Rebecca adding something to his tea, of her secret meetings with other men, of her phone calls discussing her plans for after his death. He documented everything. My hands shaking, I called Mr. Harrison. James, I said when he answered, I found Dad's letter. And the drive. He was quiet for a moment. Are you ready to take the next step? I thought about it. The evidence on the drive was damning. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy. Rebecca wouldn't just lose her social standing. She faced serious criminal charges. Not yet. I decided. Let's keep it as insurance. For now, knowing we have it is enough. Your father said you'd say that. He replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. He always said you had his sense of strategy. The next morning, a large envelope arrived from Rebecca's lawyer. Inside was a formal document relinquishing any claims to the house or my father's estate, along with a brief note. You win, Olivia. I'm leaving the state. Don't worry about hearing from me again. Just keep what you know to yourself. She'd found the cameras. Of course she had. She would have been searching the house for anything incriminating after our confrontation. The evidence on the drive was just backup. The threat of its existence was enough. I stood in Dad's study, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and felt a deep sense of peace. He had protected me one last time, taught me one final lesson about patience and strategy. The house remained as he'd wanted it, preserved, cherished, a testament to our bond. Rebecca's attempt to steal it had failed, just as her attempts to come between us had ultimately failed. In the garden, Dad's roses bloomed more beautifully than ever. I tended them carefully, honoring his memory in every flower that opened. Sometimes, while working among them, I could almost hear his voice. Remember, Livy, the strongest roots grow in silence, hidden from view until the right moment to bloom. He had been right, of course. Strength wasn't always about confrontation. Sometimes it was about waiting, watching, and letting people reveal their true nature. Rebecca had taught me about deception, about the masks people wear. But Dad had taught me something far more valuable. How to see through those masks, how to protect what matters most, and how to win without losing yourself in the process. The house stands as it always has, a monument to love, patience, and justice served quietly but completely. And somewhere, I like to think Dad is smiling, knowing that his final lesson was well learned. As for the USB drive, it remains behind that loose brick, a silent guardian ensuring that some stories stay buried, at least for now. After all, as Dad always said, timing is everything. My daughter is joining the company, so I need you to resign. Today is your last day. On the morning of the 20th, the president suddenly told me I was fired. I was shocked and didn't know what to say. The 20th was the day we paid our suppliers. Some payments were made through bank transfers for longtime suppliers, but I also made direct payments and visited them as a courtesy. You look like you can go home right away. I'll give you the day off, just for you, so leave quickly, the president said. He pushed me out of the office, and the door shut with a snap right in front of my face. I didn't even know where to start to argue. My name is Emily. I joined this family-owned paving company right after high school and worked as a clerical worker for 10 years. Well, until just now. The company had about 20 employees, and when the current chairman was the president, the workplace atmosphere was great. It was an easy place to work. The chairman, now retired, used to work closely with the younger employees, and his wife, Catherine, would come in every day to help with various tasks until he was hospitalized. Their daughter Kelly was skilled in both field and office work. Her husband was the site manager and was trusted by the on-site employees. Even though they were the founding family, they never acted superior or looked down on the employees. It would have been wonderful if this enjoyable and smooth-running company life had continued, but unfortunately, reality wasn't so kind. At the end of last year, the chairman was diagnosed with cancer during the company's group medical examination. He decided to retire as president and appointed Kelly's husband, the site manager, as the next president. Both the employees and I unanimously agreed. We all thought the chairman should focus on his treatment and wish for his long life. However, suddenly, the chairman's eldest son, Tom, appeared with his family. I didn't know where he heard the news from. It turns out the chairman had another child besides Kelly. Tom had been disowned about 30 years ago, and I didn't know about it at all. According to the senior employees, Tom was a troublemaker in his youth and often had run-ins with the police. Whenever he caused problems, the chairman and Catherine would go and apologize. After dropping out of high school, he got involved in multi-level marketing and fraudulent activities, which finally led the chairman to disown him. Despite being out of touch for a long time, Tom suddenly appeared one day, pleading with his father, "Dad, I've realized my mistakes. Please forgive me. I was shocked to witness this in our small company, where the president's office and clerical room were one and the same." Tom expressed a desire to reconcile and work in the company, but his past made it hard to believe his sincerity after being disowned. "I apologize to everyone, but I ask you to give Tom another chance," the chairman said, pleading with everyone present. Kelly and the senior employees knew about Tom's troubled history and couldn't fully celebrate, but they couldn't refuse the chairman's heartfelt request either. So Tom and his family moved into the annex of the chairman's house, with Tom becoming an employee and his wife taking on household duties. I saw their daughter only once when she visited the company. She seemed to be a college student. The chairman believed Tom had changed for the better after facing hardships in life. Catherine was overjoyed that Tom had returned with his family, talking about rebuilding the company together. However, soon after, a problem emerged. Tom insisted on something. "I'm the eldest son, so I should be the next president," declared Tom, straining his relationship with Kelly and the site manager. Despite pretending to work diligently in front of the chairman, Tom actually did very little. He frequently made demeaning remarks like, "Physical labor is for the workers, and you're all just worker ants, work silently." Naturally, his behavior quickly made him unpopular with everyone. Some of the younger employees even went directly to the chairman, saying, "I can't work under these conditions." However, both the chairman and Catherine pleaded with everyone, saying, "We will talk to Tom about this. Please try to see the bigger picture." Then, due to stress or other reasons, the chairman's cancer suddenly worsened and he was hospitalized 3 months ago. Tom declared, "I am the president." Despite employees advising the chairman and Catherine to stick with their original plan of appointing the site manager as president, they ultimately chose Tom, their biological son, over their daughter's husband. This decision sparked grumbling among some employees, who felt the chairman and Catherine were biased by parental love or losing their sharpness with age. The once harmonious company atmosphere turned tense and uncomfortable. As tensions grew, Kelly and the site manager began working behind the scenes to manage the company. This left me alone handling all administrative tasks, whereas before Catherine, Kelly, and I shared the workload. Now, I regularly work overtime, sometimes leaving so late that the date changes before I head home. Meanwhile, Tom seems to view administrative duties as effortless, spending his days at hostess bars, betting on horses, or gambling. My relationship with the president took a serious downturn over an expense issue. He had been using the company's credit card for personal dining and entertainment expenses, and I had been overlooking it to some extent. However, this time, the expense crossed a line. With apprehension, I handed the receipt back to him. "I can't approve this expense," I told him. "What? Why not?" he demanded. "This is for your wife's corrective underwear. It's not related to business, so it can't be expensed." As expected, the president's face flushed with anger. "Don't challenge me. She's the president's wife. It's natural for her to dress well. This is a valid expense." "No, that's not how it works. Your wife's underwear can't be considered a business expense," I stammered, struggling to comprehend how the president could justify a $4,000 expense for his wife's corrective underwear. His next suggestion left me even more bewildered. "Then let's turn selling corrective underwear into our new business venture. We'll categorize it as inventory so it counts as an expense." The president seemed pleased with his idea, but I was at a loss for words. "We're a paving company," I managed to say. "So what? We can threaten clients that if they don't buy from us, we'll cancel their contracts. Everyone will buy. It's easy money, $2,000 for one, $4,000 for a set." The president chuckled loudly, but I felt horrified. "That's absolutely unacceptable. It will damage our credibility," I snapped at him in anger. From that moment on, I became the target of the president's disdain. Day after day, I endured constant berating from him. The situation became so difficult that I considered quitting many times. However, I continued to endure and work, driven by my loyalty to the chairman who had always supported me and my concern for the team who would struggle if I left. The truth was, I couldn't afford to lose my job suddenly either. I decided to tough it out until the right moment to move on. But then, unexpectedly, I was fired. If I quit abruptly now, it will cause problems for our clients, I thought to myself. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my courage and confronted the president. "I can't do this. I can't just leave without proper notice and handover. Even your daughter wouldn't be able to handle the workload. Besides, today is the day we need to handle payments," I said in one breath, fully expecting the president to erupt in anger. As expected, the president's face turned red with anger. "Shut up. I told you to resign because my daughter is joining the company. Today is your last day. As for the payment, let them wait until they come to collect it. There's no need to pay them up front." "Excuse me, isn't it normal to pay for something once you buy it?" I was shocked and explained it patiently, as if talking to a child. But the president responded with something so unreasonable that I couldn't believe he was being rational. "If that's the case, just threaten to switch suppliers. Tell them we won't make the payment this time, so they should give it to us for free." "What? That's not something we can do, is it?" I was so stunned that I couldn't find the right words to respond. "You're completely useless. My daughter has a college degree. She can handle office work easily. As family, she won't question my expenses like you do. You're all talk and no action. We don't need someone like you in our company. Leave now," the president sneered. It seemed clear he intended for his daughter to handle accounting so he could justify personal expenses as business expenses. "Oh, is that so? Just remember, I won't regret this," I replied. Words were futile at this point. My patience had worn thin. I quickly gathered my belongings and left the company, feeling sorry for our clients. I called Kelly, despite knowing Catherine and Kelly were busy with the chairman. This was urgent. I explained everything and trusted the rest to Kelly. Once I left the company, I suddenly found myself with nothing to do. Being fired without notice clearly violated labor standards laws. If I reported this to the labor standards office, the company would be in trouble. Since our company was part of the middle company payment system, I could claim my severance pay and 1 month's salary. This system supports small and medium-sized enterprises that can't afford severance pay on their own. I didn't need to rush because I could apply within 5 years from my retirement date, and the Labor Standards Office had a 2-year statute of limitations. With my professional habits, I planned out the necessary procedures and timeline for retirement. I decided I could take it easy for at least a week. Lately, I had been working overtime and weekends nonstop, leaving no time for myself at home. There were many places I wanted to visit once I settled down, so I chose to go on a day trip to the beach for a refreshing break. After enjoying myself at the beach, I checked my phone in the locker and found several missed calls, emails, and voicemails. Among them, Kelly's email caught my attention. It said, "The payment process went smoothly. Everything is in order." I felt relieved. Despite the abruptness of my dismissal by the president, I couldn't shake the guilt of leaving my job in anger. Next, I listened to the voicemail from the company. It was the panicked voice of the president saying, "Hey, what's going on? They're saying I'm not the real president. Did you know about this? Explain yourself." After chuckling at his realization, I continued to check my emails and voicemails. Among them was a message from the chairman, so I promptly headed to the hospital. Arriving at the hospital room that evening, I found Catherine and the president already there. As soon as the chairman saw me, he greeted me from his bed. "Emily, I'm truly sorry for my foolish son." "Hey, what's going on? I'm not the official president. Explain yourself." Tom shouted arrogantly, clearly not understanding the situation. The chairman quickly silenced him with a stern command. "Quiet down." It turned out that right after I had called Kelly, she promptly informed the chairman and Catherine. Upon receiving the news, the chairman immediately contacted Tom, who was acting as president, and asked, "Do you really not know anything? So what's the truth?" I calmly explained to the president, who was still shouting in confusion. "Essentially, Tom, you didn't have any legal authority. Your role as president was just a title. It might seem confusing, but in business terms, president is a position within the company and doesn't hold legal standing like a representative director does. The representative director is the one legally responsible for the company's actions externally. It's a different and more formal role that requires specific legal procedures to change." I continued, "While the title of president can be changed informally within the company, altering the representative director involves complex legal processes. That's why your position didn't carry the legal weight you assumed it did." 3 months ago, when Tom was appointed president, there was strong opposition from Kelly, the site manager, and veteran employees. That's when I proposed a strategy. Tom would be a figurehead president while the chairman remained the legally responsible representative director. As someone familiar with company procedures and laws, I knew the complexities involved. Under my plan, if Tom showed genuine dedication and won over all employees, then we would initiate the legal process to formalize his presidency. However, if Tom failed to prove himself fit for the role, the backup plan was to either remove him or even consider closing the company, while Kelly and the site manager prepared to launch a new venture. Kelly doubted Tom's ability to change. The chairman and Catherine continued to believe in Tom until he unfairly dismissed me, which seemed to awaken them to his shortcomings. "If you want to be a leader, learn and take care of your employees. I've told you this many times," the chairman emphasized. Tom retorted, "It's not a big deal, right? Can't we just handle the procedures now?" "No, it's not possible," the chairman explained. "Our company offers stocks to employees who want them, and many of them own shares. Emily owns 10%, making her a major shareholder. We can't disregard her views, and other shareholders won't support you either." As the president began to understand the gravity of the situation, his face paled. "What? I don't have any shares." "None. I plan to pass on my shares to you once you prove yourself as president. I'm deeply disappointed in you. Were you only interested in my wealth, thinking I didn't have much time left?" The chairman slumped in despair, and Catherine remained silent, visibly upset. Defiantly, the president responded, "Well, I'm the eldest son. What's wrong with taking what's rightfully mine? The company belongs to me. I can't forgive you anymore. The chairman bears full responsibility as the representative director of this company. Moreover, I'm a shareholder. I have the right to call for a shareholders' meeting and propose your removal," I asserted firmly. The president's face drained of color as he grasped the implication of removal. "You mean I could be fired? Dan, you were just a clerk." "Tom, Emily is right. At this point, no one will support you. Emily was the only one who spoke up to give you a chance," Catherine interjected. Then Catherine turned to me. "Emily, I owe you a sincere apology. I regret causing you trouble because of my love for my son. Please tell me what you'd like to do." I confronted the president directly. "Mr. President, I no longer wish to work under your leadership, so I am resigning immediately. However, I expect to receive my severance pay, along with 1 month's salary including unpaid overtime and holiday pay. As a shareholder, I will also take action through the Labor Standards Office to remove anyone who is detrimental to the company." I spoke calmly, and as I did, the president's complexion shifted from pale to completely white. Continuing, I informed them how Kelly had been actively visiting clients and successfully promoting our new company. Many clients had already decided to switch from our current company to the new one, and most of our employees were planning to follow suit. "That's impossible. I'll sue you," the president threatened, his voice cracking. But the chairman intervened firmly. "I am the representative director. You have no such authority." The president collapsed to his knees, and I felt a mix of emotions: regret, disappointment, and a sense of closure. "Mr. President, it's unfortunate it had to end this way. If you had changed your approach upon returning, things might have been different. There were ample opportunities for understanding if you had made efforts to learn and adapt. Ultimately, it was the president himself who squandered those chances. A classic case of reaping what one sows." In the aftermath, the chairman decided to shut down the company, leaving Tom unemployed. The president's wife attempted to sell corrective underwear, but it didn't succeed. They faced legal issues for aggressive sales tactics and were eventually arrested for involvement in a pyramid scheme. When Kelly returned to her parents' home, she found boxes of unsold underwear left behind. As for the daughter, she found employment elsewhere, although the specifics are unknown. I now work happily at Kelly's and the site manager's new company. I cherish my relationships with others and strive to live authentically each day.